Library R. Brahma saṁhitā forward. The materialistic demeanor cannot possibly stretch to the transcendental autocrat who is ever inviting the fallen conditioned souls to associate with him through devotion or eternal serving mood. The phenomenal attractions are often found to tempt sentient beings to enjoy the variegated position which is opposed to undifferenced monism. People are so much apt to indulge in transitory speculations even when they are to educate themselves on a situation beyond their empiric area or experiencing jurisdiction. The esoteric aspect often knocks them to trace out immanence in their outward inspection of transitory and transformable things. This impulse moves them to fix the position of the immanent to an indeterminate impersonal entity, no clue of which could be discerned by moving earth and heaven through their organic senses. The lines of this booklet will surely help such puzzled souls in their march towards the personality of the immanent lying beyond their sensuous gaze of inspection. The very first stanza of this publication will revolutionize their reserved ideas when the nomenclature of the Absolute is put before them as Krishna. The speculative mind would show a tendency of offering some other attributive name to designate the unknown object. They will prefer to brand him by their experience as the creator of this universe, the entity beyond phenomena, far off the reference of any object of nature and void of all transformation. So they will urge that the very fountainhead should have no conceivable designation except to show a direction of the invisible and inaudible, untouchable, non-fragrant and unperceivable object. But they will not desist from contemplating on the object with their poor fund of experience. The interested inquirer will be found to hanker after the records left by erudite savants to incompatible hallucinative views of savage demonstration. In comparing the different names offered by different thoughts of mankind, a particular judge would decide in favor of some nomenclature which will suit best his limited and specific whims. The slave mentality of an individual will no doubt offer invective assertions to the rest who will be appealing to him for a revelation of his decision. To remedy this evil, the hymns of the accepted progenitor of the phenomena would do great help in taking up the question of nomenclature, which is possessed of adequate power to dispel all imaginations drawn out of their experiencing the phenomena by their tentative exploitations. The first hymn will establish the supremacy of the absolute truth if his substratum is not shot by the bullets of limited time, ignorance and uncomfortable feeling, as well as by recognizing the same as an effect instead of accepting him as the prime cause. He will be satisfied to mark that the object of their determination is the par excellence Supreme Lord R. Krishna, who has eternally embodied himself in his ever-presence, all-blissful, all-pervasive perfected knowledge as the very fountainhead of all prime causes of unending non-beginning time, the supplying fosterer of all entities, viz., mundane and transcendental. The subsequent lines will go to determine the different aspects of the Absolute, who are but emanations of the Supreme Fountainhead Krishna, the attractive entity of all entities. Moreover, the derivative proclamation of the nomenclature will indicate the plane of uninterrupted, unending, transcendental felicity, and the nomenclature himself is the source of the two components which go by the names of efficient and material causes. The very transcendental name Krishna is known as the embodiment of all the transcendental eternal rasas, as well as the origin of all eclipsed conceptions of interrupted rasas found in the mentality of animated beings, which are successfully depicted by literateurs and rhetoricians for our mundane speculation. The verses of Brahma saṁhitā are a full elucidation of the origination of phenomenal and mnemic conceptions. The hymns of the incarnated prime potency has dealt fully with the monotheistic speculations of different schools, which are busy to give an outer cover of an esoteric concoction without any reference to the true eternal aspect of transcendental, non-transformable and imperishable manifestation of the immanent. The hymns have also dealt with different partial aspects of the personality of the Absolute, who is quite isolated from the conception of the enjoyers of this phenomenal world. A very close attention and a comparative study of all prevailing thoughts and conceptions will relieve and enlighten all, be he a materialist, a downright atheist, an agnostic, a sceptic, a naturalist, a pantheist or a pantheist, busy with their knowledge of three dimensions only by their speculative exertions. This booklet is only the 5th chapter of the hymns of Brahma, which were recorded in 100 chapters. The Supreme Lord R. Chaitanya picked up this chapter from the temple of Dikayava at Tiruvattar, a village lying under the government of Travancore, for the assurance of all God-loving, and especially Krishna-loving, people in this conditioned jurisdiction. This booklet can easily be compared with another book which passes by the name of Armad Bhagavatam. Though it has got a reference in the pantheon of Perez, the Bhagavatam corroborates the same idea of this Pakartra. The devotees should consider that these two books tend to the identical Krishna, who is the fountainhead of all transcendental and mundane entities and has a manifestive exhibition of the plenary variegatedness. Aspersions of calumniation are restricted in the limited world, whereas transcendence cannot admit such angularities, being an angle of 180 degrees or void of any angular discrepancies. The publisher is carried away to the realm of gratitude when his stores of publication are scrutinized. H. Kurabhaktivinoda has given an elucidatory purport of the conception of the most sublime fountainhead of all entities in Bengali, and one of his devout followers has rendered that into English for propagatory purpose. The purports and the translations are traced to the backgrounds of the writings of Rlaj Vagasvam, a contemporary follower of the Supreme Lord R. Krishna Chaitanya. The emotional aspirations will find fair play in perusing the texts of this brochure by one and all who have any interest in pure theistic achievements. The materialistic inspection often goes on to say that the provincial conception of theism has made the depicting of transcendental unity into diverse face quite opposed to the ethical consideration of the limited region. But we differ from such erroneous considerations when we get a prospective view of the manifested transcendentality, eliminating all historicities and allegorical enterprises. All our enjoying mood should have a different direction when we take into account the transcendental entity who has obsessed all frailties and limitations of nature. So we solicit the happier mood of the scrutinizers to pay special attention to the importance of manifestive transcendence in Krishna. It was found necessary to publish this small book for the use of English-knowing people who are interested in the acme of transcendental truths in their manifestive phases. The theme delineated in the texts of this book is quite different from the ordinary heaps of poetical mundane literature, as they are confined to our limited aspiration of senses. The book was found in the south some 4 centuries ago, and it is again brought into light in the very same country after a long time, just like the worshipping of the goddess Ganges by the offering of her own water. Siddhanta Sarasvat Sri Gaudiya Calcutta, the 1st August 1932. Library R. Brahma Sahit Text 1. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Text 2. The spiritual place of transcendental pastimes of Krishna is portrayed in the 2nd verse. The super-excellent station of Krishna, which is known as Gokula, has thousands of petals and a corolla like that of a lotus sprouted from a part of his infinitary aspect, the whirl of the leaves being the actual abode of Krishna. Text 3. The whirl of that transcendental lotus is the realm wherein dwells Krishna. It is a hexagonal figure, the abode of the indwelling predominated and predominating aspect of the Absolute. Like a diamond, the central supporting figure of self-luminous Krishna stands as the transcendental source of all potencies. The holy name, consisting of 18 transcendental letters, is manifested in a hexagonal figure with 6-fold divisions. Text 4. The whirl of that eternal realm Gokula is the hexagonal abode of Krishna. Its petals are the abodes of gopis who are part and parcel of Krishna, to whom they are most lovingly devoted and are similar in essence. The petals shine beautifully like so many walls. The extended leaves of that lotus are the garden-like Dhyma, i.e., spiritual abode of Dik, the most beloved of Krishna. Text 5. The surrounding external plane of Gokula is described in this verse. There is a mysterious quadrangular place named Vatadvpa surrounding the outskirts of Gokula. Vatadvpa is divided into 4 parts on all sides. The abode of Vasudeva, Sakara, Pradyumna and Anrada are separately located in each of these 4 parts. These 4 divided abodes are enveloped by the 4-fold human requirements such as piety, wealth, passion and liberation, as also by the 4 Vedas, viz. Asma, Yajur and Atharva, which deal with the mantra and which are the basis of achievements of the 4-fold mundane requirements. 10 tridents are fixed in the 10 directions, including the zenith and nadir. The 8 directions are decorated with the 8 jewels of Padma, Aka, Makara, Kachapa, Mukunda, Kunda, and Nla. There are 10 protectors Dikpilas of the 10 directions in the form of mantra. The associates of the hues of blue, yellow, red and white, and the extraordinary potencies bearing the names of Vimala, etc., shine on all sides. Text 6. The Lord of Gokula is the transcendental supreme Godhead, the own self of eternal ecstasies. He is the superior of all superiors and is busily engaged in the enjoyments of the transcendental realm and has no association with his mundane potency. Text 7. Krishna never consorts with his illusory energy. Still her connection is not entirely cut off from the absolute truth. When he intends to create the material world, the amorous pastime, in which he engages by consorting with his own spiritual sit potency Ram by casting his glance at the deluding energy in the shape of sending his time energy, is an auxiliary activity. Text 8. The secondary process of association with MY is described. Ram Dev, the spiritual sit potency, beloved consort of the Supreme Lord, is the regulatrix of all entities. The divine plenary portion of Krishna creates the mundane world. At creation there appears a divine halo of the nature of his own subjective portion SVA. This halo is divine Ambhu, the masculine symbol or manifested emblem of the Supreme Lord. This halo is the dim twilight reflection of the supreme eternal effulgence. This masculine symbol is the subjective portion of divinity who functions as progenitor of the mundane world, subject to the supreme regulatrix Niyati. The conceiving potency in regard to mundane creation makes her appearance out of the supreme regulatrix. She is MY, the limited, non-absolute apart potency, the symbol of mundane feminine productivity. The intercourse of these two brings forth the faculty of perverted cognition, the reflection of the seed of the procreative desire of the Supreme Lord. Text 9. All offspring of the consort of the great Lord Mahivara of this mundane world are of the nature of the embodiment of the mundane masculine and feminine generative organs. Text 10. The person embodying the material causal principle, viz. the great Lord of this mundane world Mahivara Ambhu, in the form of the male generating organ, is joined to his female consort the limited energy MY as the efficient causal principle. The Lord of the world Mahaviyu is manifest in him by his subjective portion in the form of his glans. Text 11. The Lord of the mundane world, Mahaviyu, possesses thousands of heads, eyes, hands. He is the source of thousands of avatras in his thousands of subjective portions. He is the creator of thousands of individual souls. Text 12. The same Mahaviyu is spoken of by the name of Anarya in this mundane world. From that eternal person has sprung the vast expanse of water of the spiritual causal ocean. The subjective portion of Sakara who abides in Paravyoma, the above supreme Purua with thousands of subjective portions, reposes in the state of divine sleep yoga niter in the waters of the spiritual causal ocean. Text 13. The spiritual seeds of Sakara existing in the pores of skin of Mahaviyu are born as so many golden sperms. These sperms are covered with 5 great elements. Text 14. The same Mahaviyu entered into each universe as his own separate subjective portions. The divine portions that entered into each universe are possessed of his majestic extension, i.e., they are the eternal universal soul Mahaviyu, possessing thousands of heads. Text 15. The same Mahaviyu created Viyu from his left limb, Brahma, the first progenitor of beings, from his right limb and, from the space between his 2 eyebrows, Ambhu, the divine masculine manifested halo. Text 16. The function of Ambhu in relation to Javas is that this universe enshrining the mundane egotistic principle has originated from Ambhu. Text 17. Thereupon the same great personal Godhead, assuming the threefold forms of Viyu, Prapati and Ambhu, entering into the mundane universe, plays the pastimes of preservation, creation and destruction of this world. This pastime is contained in the mundane world. Hence, it being perverted, the Supreme Lord, identical with Mahaviyu, prefers to consort with the goddess Yoganidar, the constituent of his own spiritual sit potency full of the ecstatic trance of eternal bliss pertaining to his own divine personality. Text 18. When Viyu lying in the ocean of milk wills to create this universe, a golden lotus springs from his navel pit. The golden lotus with its stem is the abode of Brahma representing Brahmaloka or Satyaloka. Text 19. Before their conglomeration the primary elements in their nascent state remained originally separate entities. Non-application of the conglomerating process is the cause of their separate existence. Divine Mahaviyu, primal Godhead, through association with his own spiritual sit potency, moved MY and by the application of the conglomerating principle created those different entities in their state of cooperation. And after that he himself consorted with Yoganidar by way of his eternal dalliance with his spiritual sit potency. Text 20. By conglomerating all those separate entities he manifested the innumerable mundane universes and himself entered into the inmost recess of every extended conglomerate vira vigraha. At that time those Javas who had lain dormant during the cataclysm were awakened. Text 21. The same Java is eternal and is for eternity and without a beginning, joined to the Supreme Lord by the tie of an eternal kinship. He is transcendental spiritual potency. Text 22. The divine lotus which springs from the navel pit of Vivu is in every way related by the spiritual tie with all souls and is the origin of four-faced Brahma versed in the four Vedas. Text 23. On coming out of the lotus, Brahma, being guided by the divine potency, tuned his mind to the act of creation under the impulse of previous impressions. But he could see nothing but darkness in every direction. Text 24. Then the goddess of learning Sarasvat, the divine consort of the Supreme Lord, said thus to Brahma, who saw nothing but gloom in all directions, O Brahma, this mantra, viz. KLK Yagovind Yagap Jana Valabhya SVH, will assuredly fulfill your heart's desire. Text 25. O Brahma, do thou practice spiritual association by means of this mantra, then all your desires will be fulfilled. Text 26. Brahma, being desirous of satisfying Govinda, practiced the cultural acts for Krishna in Goloka, Lord of Bhattadva, for a long time. His meditation ran thus: there exists a divine lotus of 1,000 petals, augmented by millions of filaments, in the transcendental land of Goloka. On its whirl, there exists a great divine throne on which is seated our Krishna, the form of eternal effulgence of transcendental bliss, playing on his divine flute resonant with the divine sound, with his lotus mouth. He is worshipped by his amorous milkmaids with their respective subjective portions and extensions, and also by his external energy who stays outside, embodying all mundane qualities. Text 27. Then Jiyadar, mother of the Vedas, being made manifest, i.e., imparted, by the divine sound of the flute of our Krishna, entered into the lotus mouth of Brahma, born from himself, through his 8 ear holes. The lotus-born Brahma, having received the Jiyadar, sprung from the flute song of our Krishna, attained the status of the twice-born, having been initiated by the supreme primal preceptor, Godhead himself. Text 28. Enlightened by the recollection of that Jiyadar, embodying the 3 Vedas, Brahma became acquainted with the expanse of the ocean of truth. Then he worshipped our Krishna, the essence of all Vedas, with this hymn. Text 29. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of lakhs or gopas. Text 30. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with the figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. Text 31. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers beautified with the moon locket, whose 2 hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Vaimasundara is eternally manifest. Text 32. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of that transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. Text 33. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning, and the eternal Purue. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. Text 34. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogas who aspire after the transcendental and take themselves to Prima by drilling the respiration, or by the Jns who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. Text 35. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. Text 36. I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men, who are imbued with devotion, sing the mantra-esque task told by the Vedas, by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, convenances and ornaments. Text 37. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, residing in his own realm, Goloka, with RDH resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities in the company of her confidants Sakas, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. Text 38. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, who is Vaimasundara, Krishna himself with inconceivable innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. Text 39. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Arma and Siha, Vimana, etc., as his subjective portions. Text 40. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, whose effulgence is the source of the non-differentiated Brahman mentioned in the Upanishads, being differentiated from the infinity of glories of the mundane universe appears as the indivisible, infinite, limitless, truth. Text 41. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, who is the absolute substantive principle being the ultimate entity in the form of the support of all existence whose external potency embodies the threefold mundane qualities, viz. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas and diffuses the Vedic knowledge regarding the mundane world. Text 42. I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, whose glory ever triumphantly dominates the mundane world by the activity of his own pastimes, being reflected in the mind of recollecting souls as the transcendental entity of ever blissful cognitive rasa. Text 43. Lowest of all is located Devdhma mundane world. Next above it is Mahiyadhma abode of Mahiya. Above Mahiyadhma is placed Haridhma abode of Hari, and above them all is located Krishna's own realm named Goloka. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who has allotted their respective authorities to the rulers of those graded realms. Text 44. The external potency My, who is of the nature of the shadow of the Sit potency, is worshipped by all people as Durg, the creating, preserving and destroying agency of this mundane world. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda in accordance with whose will Durg conducts herself. Text 45. Just as milk is transformed into curd by the action of acids, but yet the effect curd is neither same as nor different from its cause, viz. Milk, so I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whom the state of Ambhu is a transformation for the performance of the work of destruction. Text 46. The light of one candle being communicated to other candles, although it burns separately in them, is the same in its quality. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who exhibits himself equally in the same mobile manner in his various manifestations. Text 47. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who assuming his own great subjective form, who bears the name of Ea, replete with the all-accommodating potency, and reposing in the causal ocean with the infinity of the world in the pores of his hair, enjoys creative sleep yoga nidra. Text 48. Brahma and other lords of the mundane worlds, appearing from the pores of hair of Mahaviyu, remain alive as long as the duration of one exhalation of the latter Mahaviyu. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whose subjective personality Mahaviyu is the portion of portion. Text 49. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom the separated subjective portion Brahma receives his power for the regulation of the mundane world, just as the sun manifests some portion of his own light in all the effulgent gems that bear the names of Srikanta, etc. Text 50. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, whose lotus feet are always held by Gaia upon the pair of two mulai protruding from his elephant head in order to obtain power for his function of destroying all the obstacles on the path of progress of the three worlds. Text 51. The three worlds are composed of the 9 elements, viz. Fire, earth, ether, water, air, direction, time, soul and mind. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom they originate, in whom they exist and into whom they enter at the time of the universal cataclysm. Text 52. The sun, who is the king of all the planets, full of infinite effulgence, the image of the good soul, is as the eye of this world. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, in pursuance of whose order the sun performs his journey mounting the wheel of time. Text 53. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, by whose conferred power are maintained the manifested potencies that are found to exist, of all virtues, all vices, the Vedas, the penances and all javas, from Brahma to the meanest insect. Text 54. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who burns up to their roots all fruitive activities of those who are imbued with devotion and impartially ordains for each the due enjoyment of the fruits of one's activities of all those who walk in the path of work, in accordance with the chain of their previously performed works, no less in the case of the tiny insect that bears the name of Indragopa than in that of Indra, king of the Devas. Text 55. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, the meditators of whom, by meditating upon him under the sway of wrath, amorous passion, natural friendly love, fear, parental affection, delusion, reverence and willing service, attain to bodily forms befitting the nature of their contemplation. Text 56. I worship that transcendental seat known as Vatadvpa, whereas loving consorts the Lakamas in their unalloyed spiritual essence practice the amorous service of the Supreme Lord Krishna as their only lover. Where every tree is a transcendental purpose tree, where the soil is the purpose gem, all water is nectar, every word is a song, every gate is a dance, the flute is the favorite attendant, effulgence is full of transcendental bliss and the supreme spiritual entities are all enjoyable and tasty, where numberless milk cows always emit transcendental oceans of milk. Where there is eternal existence of transcendental time, who is ever present and without past or future and hence is not subject to the quality of passing away even for the space of half a moment. That realm is known as Goloka only to a very few self-realized souls in this world. Text 57. On hearing these hymns containing the essence of the truth, the Supreme Lord Krishna said to Brahma, Brahma, if you experience the inclination to create offspring by being endowed with the real knowledge of the glory of Godhead, listen, my beloved, from me to this science set forth in the following 5 lokas. Text 58. When the pure spiritual experience is excited by means of cognition and service bhakti, super excellent unalloyed devotion characterized by love for Godhead is awakened towards Krishna, the beloved of all souls. Text 59. The highest devotion is attained by slow degrees by the method of constant endeavor for self-realization with the help of scriptural evidence, theistic conduct and perseverance in practice. Text 60. These preliminary practices of devotion asthana bhakti are conducive to the realization of loving devotion. Loving devotion than whom there is no superior well-being, who goes hand in hand with the attainment of the exclusive state of supreme bliss and who can lead to myself. Text 61. Abandoning all meritorious performances serve me with faith. The realization will correspond to the nature of one's faith. The people of the world act ceaselessly in pursuance of some ideal. By meditating on me by means of those deeds one will obtain devotion characterized by love in the shape of the supreme service. Text 62. Listen, O Vidhi, I am the seed, i.e., the fundamental principle of this world of animate and inanimate objects. I am Pradna, the substance of matter. I am Prakti, material cause, and I am Puru, efficient cause. This fiery energy that belongs specially to the Brahman, that inheres in you, has also been conferred by me. It is by bearing this fiery energy that you regulate this phenomenal world of animate and inanimate objects. Our Brahma Sahit 5.1 Translation. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin and he is the prime cause of all causes. Purport: Krishna is the exalted supreme entity having his eternal name, eternal form, eternal attribution and eternal pastimes. The very name Krishna implies his love-attracting designation, expressing by his eternal nomenclature the acme of entity. His eternal beautiful heavenly blue-tinged body glowing with the intensity of ever-existing knowledge has a flute in both his hands. As his inconceivable spiritual energy is all-extending, still he maintains his all-charming medium size by his qualifying spiritual instrumentals. His all-accommodating supreme subjectivity is nicely manifested in his eternal form. The concentrated all-time presence, uncovered knowledge and inebriating felicity have their beauty in him. The mundane manifestive portion of his own self is known as all-pervading Paramtm, Vara, Superior Lord, or Vu, all-fostering. Hence it is evident that Krishna is sole supreme Godhead. His unrivaled or unique spiritual body of super-excellent charm is eternally unveiled with innumerable spiritual instrumentals, senses, and unreckonable attributes keeping their signifying location properly, adjusting at the same time by his inconceivable conciliative powers. This beautiful spiritual figure is identical with Krishna and the spiritual entity of Krishna is identical with his own figure. The very intensely blended entity of eternal presence of felicitous cognition is the charming targeted holding or transcendental icon. It follows that the conception of the indistinguishable formless magnitude, Brahman, which is an indolent, lax, presentment of cognitive bliss, is merely a penumbra of intensely blended glow of the three concomitants, viz., the blissful, the substantive and the cognitive. This transcendental manifestive icon Krishna in his original face is primordial background of magnitudinal infinite Brahman and of the all-pervasive Oversoul. Krishna is truly visioned in his three-gated pastimes, such as owner of transcendental cows, chief of cowherds, consort of milkmaids, ruler of the terrestrial abode Gokula and object of worship by transcendental residents of Goloka beauties is Govinda. He is the root cause of all causes who are the predominating and predominated agents of the universe. The glance of his projected fractional portion in the sacred originating water viz. The personal oversoul or paramtm gives rise to a secondary potency nature who creates this mundane universe. This oversoul's intermediate energy brings forth the individual souls analogously to the emanated rays of the sun. This book is a treatise of Krishna, so the preamble is enacted by chanting his name in the beginning. Our Brahma Sahit 5.2 translation. The spiritual place of transcendental pastimes of Krishna is portrayed in the second verse. The super-excellent station of Krishna, which is known as Gokula, has thousands of petals and a corolla like that of a lotus sprouted from a part of his infinitary aspect, the whirl of the leaves being the actual abode of Krishna. Purport: Gokula, like Goloka, is not a created mundane plain unbounded character forms the display of his unlimited potency and his propagating manifestation. Baladeva is the mainstay of that energy. The transcendental entity of Baladeva has two aspects viz. Infinite spiritual manifestation and infinite accommodating space for insentient gross things. The unique quadrantal delineation of material universe will be dealt with in the proper place. The triquadrantal extensions of the transcendental infinitary field of the Almighty, unlamenting, non-perishing and non-apprehending unlimited situations of halo which are fully spiritual majestic foliation. This very majestical extension portrays the manifested lofty rich feature of the vaster unlimited region or greater atmosphere which has its resplendent location wholly beyond the realm of mundane nature, on the further shore of Vira surrounded by the halo of Brahman or indistinguishable entity. This majestical power of unlimited spirit emanates on the upper portion of the luminous sphere into the most charming Gokula or eternally existing Goloka, exceedingly beautified by the assorted display of effulgence. Some designate this region as the abode of the Supreme Narya, or the original fountainhead. Hence Gokula, which is identical with Goloka, is the supreme plane. The same sphere shines as Goloka and Gokula respectively by its upper or transcendental and lower or mundane situation. Our Santana Goswami has told us as follows in his Bhad Bhagavatam, which embodies the final essence of all the books of instructions. He displays his pastimes here in this land as he is used to do in Goloka. The difference between the two planes lies only in their locations as high and low. That is, in other words, Krishna plays exactly the same part in Goloka as he exhibits on the mundane plane of Gokula. There is practically no difference between Gokula and Goloka save that this what exists in the shape of Goloka in the upper region is the same as Gokula on the mundane plane when Krishna showed his various activity there. R.J. Bhagavatam has also inculcated the same in the Bhagavat Sandarbha of his 6 treatises. To ascertain the plane of Goloka Vana is the eternal abode of Krishna and Goloka and Vana are identically one, and though both are identical, yet Krishna's inconceivable energy has made Goloka the acme of this spiritual kingdom and Gokula of Mathur province forming a part of the mundane plane which is also a manifestation of triquadrantal vibhati, conducting majesty. Poor human understanding cannot possibly make out how the extensive triquadrantal, which is beyond human comprehension, can be accommodated in the limited nether material universe of a unique quadrantal disclosure. Gokula is a spiritual plane, hence his condescended position in the region of material space, time, etc., is in no way restricted but unlimitedly manifested with his full boundless propriety. But conditioned souls are apt to assert a material conception in regard to Gokula by their miserable senses so as to bring him below the level of their intellect. Though the eye of an observer is impeded by a cloud when gazing at the sun and though the tiny cloud can never really cover the sun, still the clouded vision apparently observes the sun as covered by the cloud. In just the same way the conditioned souls with their obscured intelligence, senses and decisions accept Gokula as a piece of measurable land. We can see Gokula from Goloka which is eternal. This is also a mystery. The attainment of final beatitude is the success in attaining one's eternal self. The success in identifying the true self is finally achieved when the screen of gross and subtle coils of conditioned souls is removed by the sweet will of Krishna. However, the idea of Goloka is seen to differ from Gokula till the success in unalloyed devotion is achieved. The transcendental plane of infinite spiritual manifestation having thousands of petals and Kerala like those of the lotus is Gokula, the eternal abode of Krishna. Our Brahma Saṁhitā 5.3 translation. The whirl of that transcendental lotus is the realm wherein dwells Krishna. It is a hexagonal figure, the abode of the indwelling predominated and predominating aspect of the Absolute. Like a diamond, the central supporting figure of self-luminous Krishna stands as the transcendental source of all potencies. The holy name consisting of 18 transcendental letters is manifested in a hexagonal figure with sixfold divisions. Purport: the transcendental pastimes of Krishna are twofold, viz., manifested and non-manifested. The pastimes in V and Vana visible to mortal eyes are the manifestive LL of our Krishna, and that which is not so visible is non-manifestive LL of Krishna. The non-manifestive LL is always visible in Goloka, and the same is visible to human eyes in Gokula, if Krishna so desires. In his Krishna Sandarbha R.J. Bhagavasvam Prabhu says, non-manifestive pastimes are expressed in manifestive Krishna LL, and Goloka LL is the non-manifestive pastimes of Krishna visualized from the mundane plane. This is also corroborated by R.R. Pa in his Bhagavatam Ta. The progressive transcendental manifestation of Gokula is Goloka. So Goloka is the self-same majestic manifestation of Gokula. The eternal pastimes of our Krishna, although not visible in Gokula, are eternally manifested in Goloka. Goloka is the transcendental majestic manifestation of Gokula. The manifestations of the non-manifestive pastimes of Krishna with regard to the conditioned souls are twofold, viz. 1. Worship through the channel of the mantras, inaudibly recited, liberating, self-dedicatory, transcendental sounds. 2. Spontaneous outflow of heart's spiritual love for Krishna. R.J. Bhagavatam has said that worship through the mantra is possible permanently in the proper place when confined to one pastime. This meditative manifestation of Goloka is the pastime attended with the worship of Krishna through the mantra. Again, the pastimes that are performed in different planes and in different moods are autocratic in diverse ways. Hence SV Rasic, i.e., spontaneous outflow of heart's spiritual love for Krishna. This loka conveys a twofold meaning. One meaning is that in the pastime attended with worship through the mantra consisting of 18 transcendental letters, transcendental words contained in the said mantra being differently placed make a manifestation of only one LL of our Krishna. As for example KLK Yagovindya Gopjana Vallabhya SVH. This is a hexagonal mantra consisting of 6 transcendental words, viz. 1. Kya, 2. Govindya, 3. Gopjana, 4. Vallabhya, 5. SV, 6. H. These 6 transcendental words, when placed juxtapositionally, indicate the mantra. The hexagonal great transcendental machinery is in this wise. The principal seed, i.e., KL, is situated in the instrument as the central pivot. Anybody with an impression of such an instrument in his mind and concentrating his thought on such spiritual entities can attain, like Kandradvaya, to the knowledge of the cognitive principle. The word SV indicates Ketra, i.e., one who is conversant with one's inner self, and the word H indicates the transcendental nature. This meaning of the mantra has also been corroborated by our Hari Bhakti Vilsa. The general meaning is this: that one who is desirous of entering into the esoteric pastimes of Krishna will have to practice his transcendental service along with the culture of the devotional knowledge relative to him. 1. Krishna Svarpa, the proper self of Krishna. 2. Krishna Asiyasin Mayavra LL Vilsa Svarpa, the true nature of Krishna's transcendental pastimes in Vraja. 3. Tat Parikara Gopjana Svarpa, the true nature of his spiritual associates in Vraja, viz. The spiritual milkmen and the milkmaids. 4. Tad Vallabha, the true nature of self-surrender to Krishna in the footsteps of the spiritual milkmaids of Vraja. 5. Udajay Vasya Siddhjana Svarpa, the true nature of the spiritual knowledge of the unalloyed individual soul. 6. Sit Praktar Arthi Krishna Sevsvabha, the true nature of transcendental service to Krishna is this: that the esoteric relation is established on the awakening of one's pure cognition. The meaning is that rasa is only the transcendental service of the central refuge or Krishna as predominating aspect of the Absolute, by one's ego as the spiritual mate of the predominated moiety of the Absolute Integer, attended with pure devotion in the shape of one's entire self-surrender. The pastime in Goloka or in Gokula during the stage of devotional progress is the meditative worship through the mantra, and during the stage of perfection the pastimes manifest themselves as the unrestrained transcendental jubilations. This is the real aspect of Goloka or Gokula, which will be made more explicit in due course. The meaning of the words Jayat Rpman and BS. 5.3 is that the transcendental meaning is expressed in the mantra by means of which, on transcendental desire of love for Krishna and the service of Krishna being added, one is established in the eternal love of Krishna. Such eternal pastimes are eternally manifested in Goloka. Our Brahma Sahit 5.4 translation. The world of that eternal realm Gokula is the hexagonal abode of Krishna. Its petals are the abodes of gopis who are part and parcel of Krishna, to whom they are most lovingly devoted and are similar in essence. The petals shine beautifully like so many walls. The extended leaves of that lotus are the garden-like Dhyma, i.e., spiritual abode of Dik, the most beloved of Krishna. Purport: the transcendental Gokula is shaped like the lotus. The eternal world is like a hexagonal figure, in that the entities are Rdh Krishna, appearing in the form of a mantra consisting of 18 transcendental letters, are centered. The propagating manifestations emanating from the Sit potency are present there with the said entities as the center. Rdh Krishna is the primary cause or the seed himself. Gop Lat Pan says OK Ra signifies the all-powerful Gop La and his potency, and KL is the same as OK Ra. Hence Kamabiya, or the primary cause of all love, is connotative of the entities Rdh Krishna. Our Brahma Sahit 5.5 translation. The surrounding external plane of Gokula is described in this verse. There is a mysterious quadrangular place named Vatadvpa surrounding the outskirts of Gokula. Vatadvpa is divided into 4 parts on all sides. The abode of Vasudeva, Sakara, Pradyumna and Anrada are separately located in each of these 4 parts. These 4 divided abodes are enveloped by the fourfold human requirements such as piety, wealth, passion and liberation, as also by the 4 Vedas, viz. G, Esma, Yajur and Atharva, which deal with the mantra and which are the basis of achievements of the fourfold mundane requirements. 10 tridents are fixed in the 10 directions, including the zenith and nadir. The 8 directions are decorated with the 8 jewels of Padma, Aka, Makara, Kachapa, Mukunda, Kunda, and Nla. There are 10 protectors dikpilas of the 10 directions in the form of mantra. The associates of the hues of blue, yellow, red and white and the extraordinary potencies bearing the names of Vimala, etc., shine on all sides. Purport: primarily Gokula is the seat of transcendental love and devotion. Hence Yaman, Argavardhana, Rdhqa, etc., of the terrestrial Brahma lie within Gokula. Again, all the majesties of Vaikuha are manifested there, extending in all directions. The pastimes of the 4 propagating manifestations are all there in their proper places. The pair of Yoma Vaikuha has got its extension from the display of the 4 propagating manifestations. Salvation as of Vaikuha, and piety, wealth and passion pertaining to worldly people, are in the proper places in Gokula as their original seed, i.e., primary cause. The Vedas also are engaged in singing the song of the Lord of Gokula. There are 10 tridents in 10 directions to prevent and disappoint those who are aspirants for having an entrance into Goloka through meditations without the grace of Krishna. Self-conceited people who try to reach this region through the paths of yoga, meditation, and jnana, empiric knowledge, are baffled in their attempts, being pierced by the 10 tridents. Self-annihilation has its excellence in Brahma Dhyma, which represents the outside covering of Goloka in the shape of tridents. La means a trident. The mundane threefold attributes and the threefold divisions of time represent the trident. Aga Yogas, i.e., ascetics who practice the eightfold yoga, are the non-differentiative liberationists who, trying to approach in the direction of Goloka, fall headlong into the pits of disappointment by being pierced and cut asunder by these tridents placed in 10 directions. Those who proceed towards the direction of Goloka through the channel of devotion alloyed with majestic ideas are fascinated with the charms of Vaikuha, which is the outer covering plane of our Goloka, at the site of the 8 perfections, viz., etc., and majesties like Padma, etc. Those who are less forward in their intelligence relapse to the sevenfold world, falling under the control of the 10 protectors of the 10 directions in the guise of mantras. In this wise, Goloka has become unknowable and inaccessible. It is only the divine selves of Godhead, the propounders of the divine dispensations for the different ages, who are always forward there to favor the approaching devotees who seek entry into the realm of Goloka through the channel of pure devotional love. These divine forms of Godhead are surrounded there with attendants of their respective natures. Vatadvpa in Goloka is their place of abode. Hence Rlah Kauravandi Vana, the manifest Visa of Chaitanya LL, has described the village of Navadvpa as bearing the name of Vatadvpa. In this Vatadvpa the concluding portions of the pastimes of Gokula exist eternally as the pastimes of Navadvpa. Hence the region of Navadvpa, Vra, and the realm of Goloka are one and the same indivisible entity. The difference only lies in the manifestations of the infinite variety of sentiments, corresponding to the diverse nature of their devotional love. There is in this a most hidden principle which only the greatest souls who are possessed of the highest transcendental love are enabled to realize by the direct grace of Krishna. The truth is as follows. In this mundane world there are 14 spheres disposed in the graded order of high and low. Persons living with wives and children hankering for the pleasure-giving effect of their fruitive actions move up and down within the limits of the 3 worlds of Bh, Bhuva and Sva. Brahmakaras of great austerities, ascetics and persons addicted to hypothetical truth, persons of a neutral disposition adopting non-fruitive works by an aptitude which seeks to be free from all mundane desires, move up and down within the limits of the worlds of Maha, Jana, Tapa and Satya. Above these worlds lies the abode of four-headed Brahma, above which lies the unlimited realm of Vaikuha of Vu, Rodaka Y, lying in the ocean of milk. Paramahasa Sannyasas and the demons killed by Ardhari, by crossing the Vaira, i.e., by passing beyond the 14 worlds, enter into the luminous realm of Brahman and attain to nirvana in the form of temporary abeyance of the temporal ego. But the devotee actuated by knowledge, Jnana Bhakta, the devotee actuated by the pure devotional aptitude, Uddha Bhakta, the devotee imbued with loving devotion, Prema Bhakta, the devotee actuated by pure love, Prema Prabhakta, and the devotee impelled by overwhelming love, Premtura Bhakta, who serve the majesty of Godhead, have their locations in Vaikuha, i.e., the transcendental realm of Rnrya. The devotees who are imbued with all love and who walk in the footsteps of the spiritual maids of Vraja alone attain to the realm of Goloka. The different locations of the devotees in Goloka according to the respective differences in the nature of their rasa, i.e., mellow quality, are settled by the inconceivable power of Krishna. The pure devotees following the devotees of Vraja and those following the pure devotees of Navadvpa are located in the realm of Krishna and Gora respectively. The identical devotees of Vraja and Navadvpa simultaneously attain to the pleasures of service in the realm of Krishna and Gora. R.J. Vagasvam writes in his work Gop La Camp that the supreme transcendental realm is called Goloka, being the abode of Go, transcendental cows, and Gopa, transcendental cowherds. This is the seat of the rasa pastimes of the absolute R. Krishna. Again, the realm is called Vatadvpa owing to the realization of some of the rasas which are the inconceivable manifestation derived from the untouched purity of that supreme realm. The twofold entities of the supreme Goloka and the supreme Vatadvpa are indivisibly the realm of Goloka. The gist of the whole matter is this: Goloka as Vatadvpa is eternally manifest because the pleasures of enjoyment of the rasa could not be had in its entirety in the pastimes of Krishna and Vraja. He accepts the emotion and effulgence of his predominated moiety, Rrdik, and makes an eternal pastime for the enjoyment of Krishna rasa there. R. Krishna Kandra coveting to taste the following pleasures, viz. To realize 1. The nature of the greatness of love of Rrdh. 2. The nature of the wonderful sweetness of his love of which Rrdik has got the taste. 3. The nature of the exquisite joy that accrues to Rrdh by her realization of the sweetness of his love took his birth, like the moon, in the ocean of the womb of Rac Dev. The esoteric desire of R.J. Vagasvam Prabhu is herein made manifest. In the Veda it is also said, let me tell you the mystery. In Navadvpa, the identical realm of Goloka, on the bank of the Ganges, Gorakandra, who is Govinda, the entity of pure cognition, who has 2 hands, who is the soul of all souls, who has the supreme great personality as the great meditative Sannisin, and who is beyond the threefold mundane attributes, makes the process of pure unalloyed devotion manifest in this mundane world. He is sole Godhead. He is the source of all forms, the Supreme Soul, and is Godhead manifesting himself in yellow, red, blue and white colors. He is the direct entity of pure cognition, full of the spiritual sit potency. He is the figure of the devotee. He is the bestower of devotion and cognizable by devotion alone. The self-same Gorakandra, who is no other than Krishna himself, in order to taste the rasa of the pastimes of RDH Krishna in Goloka, is manifest in the eternal realm of Navadvipa, identical with Goloka. This is also clear from the Vedic declarations, viz. Sanvarastra, Krishna Varatvi Krishnam, Yathpayapayati Rukma Varam, Ma and Prabdharvai, and various other statements of the theistic scriptures. Just as our Krishna had his birth in the mundane Gokula through the agency of Yogam Y, who is the primal energy of the Supreme Lord, so with her help he manifests the LL of his birth in the womb of AC Devin Navadvipa on this mundane plane. These are the absolute truths of spiritual science and not the outcome of imaginary speculation under the thraldom of the deluding energy of Godhead. Our Brahma Sahit 5.6 Translation: The Lord of Gokula is the transcendental Supreme Godhead, the own self of eternal ecstasies. He is the superior of all superiors and is busily engaged in the enjoyments of the transcendental realm and has no association with his mundane potency. Purport: the soul potency of Krishna, which is spiritual, functioning as Krishna's own proper power, has manifested his pastimes of Goloka or Gokula. By her grace, individual souls who are constituents of the marginal potency can have admission into even those pastimes. The deluding energy, who is of the nature of the perverted reflection of the spiritual sit potency, has got her location on the other side of the river Vira, which surrounds the Brahma Dha, forming the boundary of Vaikuha as the outer envelope of Goloka. The position of Goloka being absolutely unalloyed with the mundane, deluding energy, far from having any association with Krishna, feels ashamed to appear before his view. Our Brahma Sahit 5.7 Translation: Krishna never consorts with his illusory energy. Still, her connection is not entirely cut off from the absolute truth. When he intends to create the material world, the amorous pastime, in which he engages by consorting with his own spiritual sit potency Ram by casting his glance at the deluding energy in the shape of sending his time energy, is an auxiliary activity. Purport: the illusory energy has no direct contact with Krishna, but has got indirect contact. Vu: the prime cause, lying in the causal ocean, the plenary portion of Masakara, who has his seat in Vaikuha, the sphere of Krishna's own extended transcendental pastimes, casts his glance towards the deluding energy. Even in casting his glance he has no contact with the deluding energy, because the spiritual sit potency Ram then carries the function of his glance as his unpolluted ever submissive potency. The deluding energy, as the maidservant of the spiritual sit potency Ram, serves the manifested plenary portion of Godhead consorted with Ram, the time energy representing the force of activity and instrumentality of Ram. Hence there is found the process of masculinity or the creative force. Our Brahma Sahit 5.8 Translation: the secondary process of association with My is described. Ram Dev, the spiritual sit potency, beloved consort of the Supreme Lord, is the regulatrix of all entities. The divine plenary portion of Krishna creates the mundane world. At creation there appears a divine halo of the nature of his own subjective portion Sva. This halo is divine Ambhu, the masculine symbol or manifested emblem of the Supreme Lord. This halo is the dim twilight reflection of the Supreme Eternal Effulgence. This masculine symbol is the subjective portion of divinity who functions as progenitor of the mundane world, subject to the supreme regulatrix Niyati. The conceiving potency in regard to mundane creation makes her appearance out of the supreme regulatrix. She is My, the limited, non-absolute apar potency, the symbol of mundane feminine productivity. The intercourse of these two brings forth the faculty of perverted cognition, the reflection of the seed of the procreative desire of the Supreme Lord. Purport: Sakara, possessed of creative desire, is the subjective portion of Krishna taking the initiative in bringing about the birth of the mundane world. Lying in the causal water as the primal Puru Avatra, he casts his glance towards My, the limited potency. Such glance is the efficient cause of the mundane creation. Ambhu, the symbol of masculine mundane procreation, is the dim halo of this reflected effulgence. It is this symbol which is applied to the organ of generation of My, the shadow of Ram or the divine potency. The first phase of the appearance of the mundane desire created by Mahaviyu is called the seminal principle of Mahat or the perverted cognitive faculty. It is this which is identical with the mental principle ripe for procreative activity. The conception underlying it is that it is the will of the Purua who creates by using the efficient and material principles. Efficiency is MY or the productive feminine organ. The material principle is Mdhu or the procreative masculine organ. Maviyu is Purua or the dominating divine person wielding the will. Pradna or the substantive principle in the shape of mundane entities is the material principle. Nature embodying the accommodating principle Dhra is My. The principle of embodied will bringing about the intercourse of the two is the dominating divine person, Purua, subjective portion of Krishna, the manifester of the mundane world. All of these three are creators. The seed of amorous creative desire in Galoka is the embodiment of pure cognition. The seed of sex desire to be found in this mundane world is that of KL, etc., who are the shadows of the divine potency. The former, although it is the prototype of the latter, is located very far from it. The seed of the mundane sex desire is the perverted reflection in this mundane world of the seed of the original creative desire. The process of the appearance of Mdhu is recorded in the 10th and 15th lokas. Our Brahma Sahit 5.9 translation. All offspring of the consort of the great Lord Mahivara of this mundane world are of the nature of the embodiment of the mundane masculine and feminine generative organs. Purport: the full quadrantal extension of the Supreme Lord is His Majesty. Of this the triquadrantal extensions of unlamenting, non-perishing and non-apprehending situations constitute the majesties of the realms of Vaikuha and Galoka, etc. In this temporal realm of My devas and men, etc. all these together with all mundane worlds are the great majesties of the limited potency. All these entities are embodiments of the masculine and feminine organs of generation by the distinction of efficient and material causal principles. Or, in other words, they are produced by the process of sexual intercourse between the male and female organs of generation. All the information that has been accumulated by the agency of the sciences of this world possesses this nature of sexual co-union. Trees, plants and even all insentient entities are embodiments of the co-union of male and female. The feature that is of special significance is that although such expressions as the generative organs of male and female are indecorous, yet in scientific literature these words, expressing the above-mentioned principles, are exceedingly wholesome and productive of abiding value. Indecorum is merely an entity pertaining to the external custom of society. But science, and specially the highest science, cannot destroy the true entity by deference to social custom. Wherefore, in order to demonstrate the seed of mundane sex desire, the basic principle of this phenomenal world, the use of those identical words is indispensable. By the use of all these words only the masculine energy or the predominating active potency, and female energy or the predominated active potency, are to be understood. Our Brahma Sahit 5.10 translation: the person embodying the material causal principle, viz. The great Lord of this mundane world Mahivara Mdhu, in the form of the male generating organ, is joined to his female consort the limited energy My as the efficient causal principle. The Lord of the world Maviyu is manifest in him by his subjective portion in the form of his glands. Purport: in the transcendental atmosphere, Paravyoma, where spiritual majesty preponderates, there is present Rnrya who is not different from Krishna. Masakara, subjective plenary facsimile of the extended personality of Rnrya, is also the divine plenary portion of the propagatory embodiment of R. Krishna. By the power of his spiritual energy, a plenary subjective portion of him, eternally reposing in the neutral stream of Vira forming the boundary between the spiritual and mundane realms, casts his glance, at creation, unto the limited shadow potency, My, who is located far away from himself. Thereupon Mdhu, Lord of Pradna embodying the substantive principle of all material entities, who is the same as Rudra, the dim reflection of the Supreme Lord's own divine glance, consummates his intercourse with My, the efficient mundane causal principle. But he can do nothing independently of the energy of Maviyu representing the direct spiritual power of Krishna. Therefore, the principle of Mahat, or the perverted cognitive faculty, is produced only when the subjective plenary portion of Krishna, viz. The prime divine Avat Ramaviyu, who is the subjective portion of Sakara, himself the subjective portion of Krishna, is propitious towards the active mutual endeavors of My, Eva's consort, Akti, and Pradna, or the principle of substantive mundane causality. Agreeably to the initiative of Maviyu, the consort of Eva creates successively the mundane ego, Ahakera, the five mundane elements, BH test, viz. Space, etc. their attributes, tanam tres, and the limited senses of the conditioned soul, java. The constituent particles in the form of pencils of effulgence of Mahaviyu are manifest as the individual souls, javas. This will be elaborated in the sequel. Our Brahma Sahit 5.11 translation. The Lord of the mundane world, Mahaviyu, possesses thousands of heads, eyes, hands. He is the source of thousands of avatras in his thousands of subjective portions. He is the creator of thousands of individual souls. Purport. Mahaviyu, the object of worship of the hymns of all the Vedas, is possessed of an infinity of senses and potencies, and he is the prime avatra Purua, the source of all the avatras. Our Brahma Sahit 5.12 translation. The same Mahaviyu is spoken of by the name of an Arya in this mundane world. From that eternal person has sprung the vast expanse of water of the spiritual causal ocean. The subjective portion of Sakara who abides in Paravyoma, the above supreme Purua with thousands of subjective portions, reposes in the state of divine sleep Yoga Nidar in the waters of the spiritual causal ocean. Purport. Yoga Nidar, divine sleep, is spoken of as ecstatic trance which is of the nature of the bliss of the true subjective personality. The above mentioned Ramdev is Yoga Nidar in the form of Yogam Y. Our Brahma Sahit 5.13 translation. The spiritual seeds of Sakara existing in the pores of skin of Mahaviyu are born as so many golden sperms. These sperms are covered with 5 great elements. Purport. The prime divine avatra lying in the spiritual causal ocean is such a great affair that in the pores of his divine form spring up myriads of seeds of the universes. Those series of universes are the perverted reflections of the infinite transcendental region. As long as they remain embedded in his divine form, they embody the principle of spiritual reflection having the form of golden eggs. Nevertheless, by the creative desire of Mahaviyu, the minute particles of the great elements, which are constituents of the mundane efficient and material causal principles, envelop them. When those golden sperms, coming out with the exhalation of Mahaviyu, enter into the unlimited accommodating chamber of the limited potency, MY, they become enlarged by the non-conglomerate great elements. Our Brahma Sahit 5.14 translation. The same Mahaviyu entered into each universe as his own separate subjective portions. The divine portions that entered into each universe are possessed of his majestic extension, i.e., they are the eternal universal soul Mahaviyu, possessing thousands of heads. Purport. Mahaviyu lying in the spiritual causal ocean is the subjective portion of Mahasakara. He entered, as his own subjective portions, into those universes. These individual portions all represent the second divine Purua lying in the ocean of conception and is identical with Mahaviyu in every respect. He is also spoken of as the divine guide, from within, of all souls. Our Brahma Sahit 5.15 translation. The same Mahaviyu created Viyu from his left limb, Brahma, the first progenitor of beings, from his right limb and, from the space between his 2 eyebrows, Ambhu, the divine masculine manifested halo. Purport. The divine Purua, lying in the ocean of milk, the same who is the regulator of all individual souls, is our Viyu. And Hiryagarbha, the seminal principle, the portion of the Supreme Lord, is the prime progenitor who is different from the four-faced Brahma. This same Hiryagarbha is the principle of seminal creating energy of every Brahma belonging to each of the infinity of universes. The divine masculine manifested halo, Ambhu, is the plenary manifestation of his prototype Ambhu, the same as the primary divine masculine generative symbol Ambhu whose nature has already been described. Viyu is the integral subjective portion of Mahaviyu, hence he is the great lord of all the other lords. The progenitor, Brahma, and Ambhu are the dislocated portions of Mahaviyu, hence they are gods with delegated functions. His own potency being on the left side of Godhead, Viyu appears in the left limb of Mahaviyu from the unalloyed essence of his spiritual potency. Viyu, who is Godhead himself, is the inner guiding oversoul of every individual soul. He is the personality of Godhead described in the Vedas as being of the measure of a thumb. He is the nourisher. The Karmas, elevationists, worship him as an Arya, the Lord of sacrifices, and the Yagas desire to merge their identities in him as Paramtiyam, by the process of their meditative trance. Our Brahma Sahit 5.16 translation. The function of Ambhu in relation to Javas is that this universe enshrining the mundane egotistic principle has originated from Ambhu. Purport: the basic principle is the Supreme Lord himself, who is the embodiment of the principle of existence of all entities devoid of separating egotisms. In this mundane world, the appearance of individual entities as separated egotistic symbols is the limited perverted reflection of the unalloyed spiritual potency. And, as representing the primal masculine divine generative function Mbu, it is united to the accommodating principle, viz. The mundane female organ, which is the perverted reflection of the spiritual potency, Ramdev. At this function Mbu is nothing but the mere material causal principle embodying the extension in the shape of ingredient as matter. Again, when in course of the progressive evolution of mundane creation each universe is manifested, then in the principle of Mbu, born of the space between the two eyebrows of Vu, there appears the manifestation of the personality of Rudra. Yet under all circumstances Mbu fully enshrines the mundane egotistic principle. The innumerable jivas as spiritual particles emanating from the oversoul in the form of pencils of rays of effulgence have no relation with the mundane world when they come to know themselves to be the eternal servants of the Supreme Lord. They are then incorporated into the realm of Vaikuha. But when they desire to lord it over My, forgetting their real identity, the egotistic principle Mbu entering into their entities makes them identify themselves as separated enjoyers of mundane entities. Hence Mbu is the primary principle of the egotistic mundane universe and of perverted egotism in Jivas that identifies itself with their limited material bodies. Our Brahma Sahit 5.17 translation: thereupon the same great personal Godhead, assuming the threefold forms of Vu, Prapati and Mbu, entering into the mundane universe, plays the pastimes of preservation, creation and destruction of this world. This pastime is contained in the mundane world. Hence, it being perverted, the Supreme Lord, identical with Mahaviyu, prefers to consort with the goddess Yoganidar, the constituent of his own spiritual potency, full of the ecstatic trance of eternal bliss appertaining to his own divine personality. Purport: the dislocated portions of the divinity, viz. Prapati and Mbu, both identifying themselves as entities who are separate from the divine essence, sport with their respective non-spiritual asset consorts, viz. Svaiturdev and Umdev, the perverted reflections of the spiritual potency. The Supreme Lord Vu is the only Lord of the spiritual potency, Ram or Lakam. Our Brahma Sahit 5.18 translation: when Vu lying in the ocean of milk wills to create this universe, a golden lotus springs from his navel pit. The golden lotus with its stem is the abode of Brahma, representing Brahmaloka or Satyaloka. Purport: gold here means the dim reflection of pure cognition. Our Brahma Sahit 5.19 translation: before their conglomeration the primary elements in their nascent state remained originally separate entities. Non-application of the conglomerating process is the cause of their separate existence. Divine Mahaviyu, primal Godhead, through association with his own spiritual potency, moved My, and by the application of the conglomerating principle created those different entities in their state of cooperation. And after that he himself consorted with Yoganidar by way of his eternal dalliance with his spiritual potency. Purport: Madhyakya Prakti Asyate Sakar Karam. BG 9.10 The mundane energy Prakti gives birth to this universe of animate and inanimate beings by my direction. The purport of this loka of the GT is that My, the perverted reflection of spiritual potency, was at first inactive, and her extension of matter constituting the material cause was also in the separately dislocated state. In accordance with the will of Krishna, this world is manifested as the resultant of the union of the efficient and the material causal principles of My. In spite of that, the Supreme Lord himself remains united with his potency, Yoganidar. The word Yoganidar or Yogam indicates as follows: the nature of potency is manifestive of the absolute truth, while the nature of her perverted reflection, My, is envelopment in the gloom of ignorance. When Krishna desires to manifest something in the mundane ignorance-wrapped affairs, he does this by the conjunction of his spiritual potency with his inactive non-spiritual potency. This is known as Yogam. It carries a twofold notion, namely, transcendental notion and mundane inert notion. Krishna himself, his subjective portions and those jivas who are his unalloyed separated particles, realize the transcendental notion in that conjunction, while conditioned souls feel the mundane inert notion. The external coating of transcendental knowledge in the conscious activities of conditioned souls bears the name of Yoganidar. This is also an influence of the potency of the divinity. This principle will be more elaborately considered hereafter. Our Brahma Sahit 5.20 translation. By conglomerating all those separate entities he manifested the innumerable mundane universes and himself entered into the inmost recess of every extended conglomerate vira vigraha. At that time those Jivas who had lain dormant during the cataclysm were awakened. Purport: the word ga, hidden cavity, bears various interpretations in the stras. In some portions the non-manifestive pastimes of the Lord is called ga, and elsewhere the resting place of the indwelling spirit of all individual souls is named ga. In many places the inmost recesses of the heart of each individual is termed ga. The main point is that the place which is hidden from the view of men in general is designated ga. Those Jivas that were merged in Hari at the end of the life of Brahma in the great cataclysm during the preceding great age of the universe reappeared in this world in accordance with their former fruitive desires. Our Brahma Sahit 5.21 translation. The same Jiva is eternal and is for eternity and without a beginning, joined to the Supreme Lord by the tie of an eternal kinship. He is transcendental spiritual potency. Purport: just as the sun is eternally associated with his ray, so the transcendental Supreme Lord is eternally joined with the Jivas. The Jivas are the infinitesimal particles of his spiritual effulgence and are, therefore, not perishable like mundane things. Jivas, being particles of Godhead's effulgent rays, exhibit on a minute scale the qualities of the divinity. Hence Jivas are identical with the principles of knowledge, knower, egoism, enjoyer, meditator and doer. Krishna is the all-pervading, all-extending Supreme Lord, while Jivas have a different nature from his, being his atomic particles. That eternal relationship consists in this, that the Supreme Lord is the eternal master and Jivas are his eternal servants. Jivas have also sufficient eligibility in respect of the mellow quality of the divinity. Aparamitosti vni praktiviti me parambg. 7.5. By this verse of the GT it is made known that Jivas are his transcendental potency. All the qualities of the unalloyed soul are above the eightfold qualities such as egotism, etc., pertaining to his asset potency. Hence the Jiva potency, though very small in magnitude, is still superior to asset potency or my. This potency has another name, viz. Taasth or marginal potency, being located on the line demarcating the spheres of the spiritual and mundane potencies. He is susceptible to the influence of the material energy owing to his small magnitude, but so long as he remains submissive to Krishna, the Lord of my, he is not liable to the influence of my. The worldly afflictions, births and rebirths are the concomitants of the fettered condition of souls fallen into the clutches of the deluding potency from a time that has no beginning. Our Brahma Sahit 5.22 translation. The divine lotus which springs from the navel pit of Vu is in every way related by the spiritual tie with all souls and is the origin of four-faced Brahma versed in the four Vedas. Purport: the same divine lotus originating from the divine person entered into the hidden recess is the superior plane of aggregation of all individual souls. The four-faced Brahma, the image of self-enjoyment, derives his origin from the prototype Brahma or Hirayagarbha, the mundane seminal principle, who regards the aggregate of all mundane entities as his own proper body. The delegated godship of Brahma as well as his being the dislocated portion of Krishna are also established. Our Brahma Sahit 5.23 translation. On coming out of the lotus, Brahma, being guided by the divine potency, tuned his mind to the act of creation under the impulse of previous impressions, but he could see nothing but darkness in every direction. Purport: Brahma's impulse for creation arises solely from his previous impressions. All Jivas get their nature conformably to their impressions of previous births and accordingly their activity can have a beginning. It is called the unseen or the result of one's previous deeds. His natural impulse is formed according to the nature of the deeds done by him in the previous kalpa. Some of the eligible Jivas also attain to the office of Brahma in this way. Our Brahma Sahit 5.24 translation. Then the goddess of learning Sarasvat, the divine consort of the Supreme Lord, said thus to Brahma who saw nothing but gloom in all directions: O Brahma, this mantra, viz. KLK Yagovind Yagap Jana Valabhya SVH, will assuredly fulfill your heart's desire. Purport: the mantra, consisting of the 18 divine letters prefixed by the Kamabhya, is alone super excellent. It has a twofold aspect. One aspect is that it tends to make the pure soul run after all attractive are Krishna, the Lord of Gokula and the divine milkmaids. This is the acme of the spiritual tendency of Jivas. When the devotee is free from all sorts of mundane desires and willing to serve the Lord, he attains the fruition of his heart's desire, viz., the love of Krishna. But in the case of the devotee who is not of unmixed aptitude, this super excellent mantra fulfills his heart's desire also. The transcendental Kamabhya is inherent in the divine logos located in Goloka, and the Kamabhya pervertedly reflected in the worldly affairs satisfies all sorts of desires of this mundane world. Our Brahma Sahit 5.25 Translation: O Brahm, do thou practice spiritual association by means of this mantra, then all your desires will be fulfilled. Purport: its purport is clear. Our Brahma Sahit 5.26 Translation: Brahm, being desirous of satisfying Govinda, practiced the cultural acts for Krishna in Goloka, Lord of Bhattadva, for a long time. His meditation ran thus: there exists a divine lotus of 1,000 petals, augmented by millions of filaments, in the transcendental land of Goloka. On its whirl, there exists a great divine throne on which is seated our Krishna, the form of eternal effulgence of transcendental bliss, playing on his divine flute resonant with the divine sound, with his lotus mouth. He is worshipped by his amorous milkmaids with their respective subjective portions and extensions, and also by his external energy who stays outside, embodying all mundane qualities. Purport: although the object of meditation is fully transcendental, yet owing to her nature which is permeated with the quality of active mundane hankering, the non-spiritual potency of Krishna, embodying the principles of mixed sattva, rajas, and tamas in the forms of Durga, and other non-spiritual powers, meditated on the Supreme Lord Krishna as the object of their worship. So long as there is any trace of mundane desire in one's heart, it is the object of worship of Durga, who has to be worshipped by such a person. Nevertheless, the fulfillment of one's heart's desire results from the worship of the object of worship of Dev, and not from the worship of Dev herself. This is in accordance with the Loka, SB 2.3.10. The meaning of this loka of the Bhagavatam is that though other gods, as distinct manifestations of the Supreme Lord, are bestowers of sundry specific boons, yet a sensible person should worship the all-powerful Supreme Lord, giver of all good, with unalloyed devotion, without worshipping those mundane gift-giving deities. Accordingly, Brahma meditated upon Krishna in Goloka, the object of the worship, from a distance of Dev. True devotion is unalloyed devotional activity free from all mundane desire. The devotion of Brahma, etc., is not unmixed devotion, but there is a stage of unmixed predilection even in devotion for the attainment of one's selfish desire. This has been fully described in the concluding 5 lokas of this work. That is the easiest method of divine service, prior to the attainment of self-realization, by fallen souls. Our Brahma Sahit 5.27 Translation: then Jyadar, mother of the Vedas, being made manifest, i.e., imparted, by the divine sound of the flute of our Krishna, entered into the lotus mouth of Brahma, born from himself, through his 8 ear holes. The lotus-born Brahma, having received the Jyadar, sprung from the flute song of our Krishna, attained the status of the twice-born, having been initiated by the supreme primal preceptor, Godhead himself. Purport: the sound of Krishna's flute is the transcendental blissful sound, hence the archetype of all Veda is present in it. The Jyadar is Vedic rhythm. It contains a brief meditation and prayer. Kama Jyadar is the highest of all the Jyadaras, because the meditation and prayer contained in it are full of the perfect transcendental sportive activities which are not to be found in any other Jyadar. The Jyadar that is attained as the sequel of the 18-lettered mantra is Kama Jyadar, which runs thus: Kal Kama Devyavid Mehi Pupabhyadh Mahi Tan no Naga Prakodati. In this Jyadar, the realization of the transcendental pastimes of Argopjana Valabha after perfect meditation and the prayer for the attainment of the transcendental God of love are indicated. In the spiritual world there is no better mode of endeavor for securing the super excellent rasa Beduud love. As soon as that Jyadar entered into the ear holes of Brahma, he became the twice-born and began to chant the Jyadar. Whoever has received the same Jyadar in reality has attained his spiritual rebirth. The status of a twice-born that is obtained in accordance with one's worldly nature and lineage, by the fettered souls in this mundane world, is far inferior to that of the twice-born who obtains admission into the transcendental world. Because the initiation or acquisition of transcendental birth as a result of spiritual initiation is the highest of glories, inasmuch as the Java is thereby enabled to attain to the transcendental realm. Our Brahma Sahit 5.28 translation. Enlightened by the recollection of that Jyātar, embodying the three Vedas, Brahma became acquainted with the expanse of the ocean of truth. Then he worshipped our Krishna, the essence of all Vedas, with this hymn. Purport: Brahma thought thus within himself, by the recollection of Jyātar, it seems to me that I am the eternal maidservant of Krishna. Though the other mysteries in regard to the condition of the maidservant of Krishna were not revealed to him, Brahma, by dint of his searching self-consciousness, became well acquainted with the ocean of truth. All the truths of the Vedas were revealed to him, and with the help of those essences of the Vedas he offered this hymn to the Supreme Lord our Krishna. R.M. Mahaprabhu has taught this hymn to his favorite disciples inasmuch as it fully contains all the transcendental truths regarding the Vaishnava philosophy. Readers are requested to study and try to enter into the spirit of his hymn with great care and attention, as a regular daily function. Our Brahma Sahit 5.29 translation. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of lakhs or gopas. Purport: by the word saṁhitā is meant transcendental gem. Just as MY builds this mundane universe with the five material elements, so the spiritual potency has built the spiritual world of transcendental gems. The saṁhitā, which serves as material in the building of the abode of the Supreme Lord of Goloka, is a far rarer and more agreeable entity than the philosopher's stone. The purpose tree yields only the fruits of piety, wealth, fulfillment of desire and liberation. But the purpose trees in the abode of Krishna bestow innumerable fruits in the shape of checkered divine love. Kamadenas, cows yielding the fulfillment of desire, give milk when they are milked. But the Kamadenas of Goloka pour forth oceans of milk in the shape of the fountain of love, showering transcendental bliss that does away with the hunger and thirst of all pure devotees. The words Lakha and Sahasrata signify endless numbers. The word Sam Brahma or Esther indicates being saturated with love. Here Lakham denotes Gop. Deeparuwa means, he who is the primeval Lord. Our Brahma Sahit 5.30 translation. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with the figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. Purport: the matchless beauty of Krishna, the Supreme Lord of Goloka, is being described. Krishna, the all-pervading cognition, has a spiritual form of his own. The form of Krishna is not a fanciful creation of imagination formed after visualizing the beautiful things of the world. What Brahma saw in his ecstatic trance of pure devotion is being described. Krishna is engaged in playing upon his flute. That flute by his enchanting musical sound attracts the hearts of all living beings. Just as a lotus petal produces a pleasant sight, so the two beautiful eyes of Krishna, who causes the manifestation of our spiritual vision, display the unlimited splendor and beauty of his moon-like face. The loveliness that adorns his head with peacock feather figures, the corresponding feature of the spiritual beauty of Krishna. Just as a mass of blue clouds offers a specifically soothing, pleasant view, the complexion of Krishna is analogously tinged with a spiritual dark blue color. The beauty and loveliness of Krishna is far more enchanting than that of Cupid multiplied a millionfold. Our Brahma Sahit 5.31 translation. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Vaimasundara is eternally manifest. Purport: in the loka beginning with Saṁhitā Prakara, the transcendental region and the spiritual names of Govinda. In the loka beginning with Viyukvantam, the eternal beautiful form of Govinda, and in this loka the amorous pastimes of Govinda, the embodiment of his 64 excellences, have been described. All the spiritual affairs that come within the scope of description in the narration of the ecstatic mellow quality, rasa, are included in the spiritual amorous sports of Govinda. Our Brahma Sahit 5.32 translation. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of that transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. Purport: for want of a taste of things spiritual, a grave doubt arises in the minds of those who are enchained by worldly knowledge. On hearing a narration of the pastimes of Krishna, they think that the truth, tattva, regarding Krishna is the mental concoction of certain learned scholars, created by their imaginative brains out of material drawn from the mundane principles. With the object of removing this harmful doubt, Brahma in this and the three following lokas, after distinguishing between the two things, viz., spirit and matter, in a rational manner, has tried to make one understand the pure LL of Krishna, obtained by his unmixed ecstatic trance. Brahma wants to say that the form of Krishna is all existence, all knowledge and all bliss, whereas all mundane experiences are full of palpable ignorance. Although there is specific difference between the two, the fundamental truth is that spiritual affairs constitute the absolute source. Specification and variegatedness are ever present in it. By them are established the transcendental abode, form, name, quality and sports of Krishna. It is only by a person, possessed of pure spiritual knowledge and freedom from any relationship with MY, that those amorous pastimes of Krishna can at all be appreciated. The spiritual abode, the seat of pastimes, emanated from the sit potency and formed of Sintmai, transcendental philosopher's stone, and the figure of Krishna, are all spiritual. Just as MY is the perverted reflection of the spiritual potency, the variegatedness created by MY, ignorance, is also a perverted reflection of spiritual variegatedness. So a mere semblance of the spiritual variegatedness is only noticed in this mundane world. Notwithstanding such semblance, the two are wholly different from one another. The unwholesomeness of matter is its defect. But in the spirit there is variegatedness which is free from any fault or contamination. The soul and the body of Krishna are identical, whereas the body and soul of fallen creatures are not so. In the spiritual sphere there is no such difference as that between the body and soul, between the limbs and their proprietor, between the attributes and the object possessing them, of this world. But such difference really exists in the case of conditioned souls. Limb though Krishna is, his every limb is the whole entity. He performs all varieties of divine spiritual functions with every one of his limbs. Hence he is an indivisible whole and a perfect transcendental entity. Both Jiva soul and Krishna are transcendental, so they belong to the same category. But they differ in this, that the transcendental attributes exist in the Jiva soul in infinitesimally small degrees, whereas in Krishna they are found in their fullest perfection. Those attributes manifest themselves in their proper infinitesimality only when the Jiva soul attains his unadulterated spiritual status. The Jiva soul attains the nearest approach to the absolute identity only when the spiritual force of ecstatic energy appears in him by the grace of Krishna. Still Krishna remains the object of universal homage by reason of his possession of certain unique attributes. These fourfold unrivaled attributes do not manifest themselves in Anarya, the Lord of Vaikuha, or in primeval Puru Avatras, or in the highest deities such as Eva, not to speak of Jivas. Our Brahma Sahit 5.33 Translation: I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning, and the eternal Purua. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. Purported to means indivisible truth, who is knowledge absolute. Brahman, the infinite, emanates from him as his effulgence, and God immanent, Paramtm, as his constituent. But nevertheless he remains one and indivisible. Asayuta means that though myriads of avatras emanate from him as subjective portions and millions of jivas as separated spiritual particles, still he remains intact as the undivided whole of fullest perfection. Though he indulges in exhibiting the pastimes of births, etc., still he is without a beginning. Though he disappears after the pastimes of his appearance, still he is eternal. Though without origin, yet he is with an origin in his pastime of appearance. And although eternal in essence, he is still a person in the full bloom of youth. The sum and substance of it is that though he possesses diverse and apparently mutually contradictory qualities, still they are in universal harmonious concordance by dint of his unthinkable potency. This is what is meant by Siddharma, transcendental nature, as distinguished from the material. His graceful threefold bending form with flute in hand, possesses eternal blooming youth and is above all unwholesomeness that is to be found in limited time and space. In the transcendental realm there is no past and future but only the unalloyed and immutable present time. In the transcendental sphere there is no distinction between the object and its qualities and no such identity as is found in the limited mundane region. Hence those qualities that seem to be apparently contradictory in the light of mundane conception limited by time and space exist in agreeable and dainty concordance in the spiritual realm. How can the Jiva realize such unprecedented existence? The limited intellectual function of the Jiva is always contaminated by the influence of time and space and is, therefore, not in a position to shake off this limitedness. If the potency of cognitive function does not extend to the realization of the transcendental, what else can? In reply, Brahma says that the transcendental absolute is beyond the reach of the Vedas. The Vedas originate in sound and sound originates in the mundane ether. So the Vedas cannot present before us a direct view of the transcendental world, Goloka. It is only when the Vedas are imbued with the Sit potency that they are enabled to deal with the transcendental. But Goloka reveals itself to every Jiva soul when he is under the influence of the spiritual cognitive potency joined to the essence of ecstatic energy. The ecstatic function of devotion is boundless and is surcharged with unalloyed transcendental knowledge. That knowledge reveals Goloka Tattva, the principle of the highest transcendental, in unison with devotion, without asserting itself separately but as a subsidiary to unalloyed devotion. Our Brahma Sahit 5.34 Translation: I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogas who aspire after the transcendental and take themselves to Prma by drilling the respiration, or by the Jns who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. Purport: the attainment of the lotus feet of Govinda consists in the realization of unalloyed devotion. The Kaivalya, realized non-alternative state which is attained by the Yogas by practicing trance for thousands of millions of years, and the state of merging into the non-differentiated impersonality of Godhead beyond the range of limitation attained by non-dualists after a similar period passed in distinguishing between the spiritual and non-spiritual and eliminating things of the limited sphere one after another by the formula not this, not that are simply the outskirts of the lotus feet of Krishna and not the lotus feet themselves. The long and short of the matter is this: Kaivalya, or merging into the Brahman, constitutes the line of demarcation between the world of limitation and the transcendental world. For, unless we step beyond them, we can have no taste of the variegatedness of the transcendental sphere. These conditions are the simple absence of misery arising from mundane affinity but are not real happiness or felicity. If the absence of misery be called a bit of pleasure, then also that bit is very small and of no consequence. It is not sufficient to destroy the condition of materiality, but the real gain to the Jiva is his eternal existence in his self-realized state. This can be attained only by the grace of unalloyed devotion, which is essentially sit or transcendental in character. For this end, abstract and uninteresting mental speculation is of no avail. Our Brahma Sahit 5.35 Translation: He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. Purport: Krishna is the highest of all entities. In him is an entity which is termed Sit, spiritual, which is distinct from the principle of limitation. By his inconceivable power, he can at will create numberless universes. All the mundane universes owe their origin to the transformation of his external potency. Again, his abode is beyond human conception. Since all worlds, limited and spiritual, Sit, exist in him, and he resides simultaneously in his fullness and entirety in all the atoms in all the worlds. All pervasiveness is only a localized aspect of the majesty of Krishna, the Lord of all. Though he is all-pervasive, yet in his existence everywhere in a medium shape consists his spiritual lordship beyond human conception. This argument favors the doctrine of simultaneous inconceivable distinction and non-distinction, and knocks down the contaminating Myveda and other allied doctrines. Our Brahma Sahit 5.36 Translation: I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men, who are imbued with devotion, sing the mantra-esque task told by the Vedas, by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, convences and ornaments. Purport: in discussing rasa we meet with 5 kinds of devotion or service. Da, or unattached; Disya, or pertaining to reverential willing service; Sakya, or friendship; Vitsalya, or parental love; and Jira, or juvenile love. The devotees, surcharged with the ideas of their respective service, serve Krishna eternally and ultimately reach the goal of their respective ideals. They attain the real nature of their self befitting their respective rasas, their glories, convences, seats befitting their sacred service, and transcendental qualities of ornaments enhancing the beauty of their real nature. Those who are advocates of Ntarasa attain the region of Brahma Paramtiyam, the seat of eternal peace. Those of Dsyarasa get to Vaikuha, the spiritual majestic abode of Rnrya. Those of Sakya, Vitsalya and Madhura Rasa, juvenile love, attain Galoka Dhyachma, Krishna's abode, above Vaikuha. They worship Krishna by the ektas depicted in the Vedas with the ingredients and objects befitting their respective rasas in those regions. The Vedas, under the influence of the spiritual potency in certain passages, speak of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. The liberated souls chant the name, qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord, under the guidance of the same spiritual potency. Our Brahma Sahit 5.37 Translation: I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm, Galoka, with RDH resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities, in the company of her confidant Sakas, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. Purport: although the Lord Absolute and his potency are one and the self-same existence, still they exist eternally as separate entities, as RDH and Krishna. In both the ecstatic energy and the transcendental Lord Krishna, there exists Jira Rasa, amorous love, whose quality is inconceivable. The Vibha, extension, of that rasa, mellow quality, is twofold, viz. Lambana, prop, and Udpana, stimulation. Of these, Lambana is twofold, viz. Raya, supported, and Vyaya, supporter. Raya signifies Ardik herself and the extensions of her own form, and Vyaya means Krishna himself. Krishna is Govinda, Lord of Galoka. The Gopas are the facsimile Raya of that rasa. With them Krishna indulges in eternal pastimes in Galoka. Nija Arpate means with the attributes manifested from the ecstatic energy. The 64 activities in fine arts and crafts are the following. 1. Jita, art of singing. 2. Vidya, art of playing on musical instruments. 3. Antaya, art of dancing. 4. Anya, art of theatricals. 5. Lekya, art of painting. 6. Vyakachedya, art of painting the face and body with colored ornaments and cosmetics. 7. Tayula Kusuma Balvikra, art of preparing offerings from rice and flowers. 8. Pupistara, art of making a covering of flowers for a bed. 9. Dana Vasanga Arga, art of applying preparations for cleansing the teeth, cloths and painting the body. 10. Maibhmik Karma, art of making the groundwork of jewels. 11. Airakana, art of covering the bed. 12. Udaka Vidya, art of playing on music in water. 13. Udaka Jhta, art of splashing with water. 14. Citra Yoga, art of practically applying an admixture of colors. 15. Mlyagrathana Vikalpa, art of designing a preparation of wreaths. 16. Ekharpya Yoyana, art of practically setting the coronet on the head. 17. Nepathya Yoga, art of practically dressing in the tiring room. 18. Karaptrabhaga, art of decorating the tragus of the ear. 19. Shugandha Yukti, art of practical application of aromatics. 20. Bhya Yoyana, art of applying or setting ornaments. 21. Indra Jla, art of jugglery. 22. Kakamra, kind of art. 23. Hasta Elgava, art of sleight of hand. 24. Citra Kp Pabakyavikrakri, art of preparing varieties of salad, bread, cake and delicious food. 25. Pinako Rasa Rg Savo Yoyana, art of practically preparing palatable drinks and tinning drafts with red color. 26. Scvyakarma, art of needleworks and weaving. 27. Estrakar, art of playing with thread. 28. The Amaraka Vidya, art of playing on lute and small X-shaped drum. 29. Prahalik, art of making and solving riddles. 29a. Pratimel, art of caping or reciting verse for verse as a trial for memory or skill. 30. Durvakako Yoga, art of practicing language difficult to be answered by others. 31. Pustaka Vikana, art of reciting books. 32. Anikkayikdarana, art of enacting short plays and anecdotes. 33. Kvayasamasi Pira, art of solving enigmatic verses. 34. Paikvetrabhya Vikalpa, art of designing preparation of shield, cane and arrows. 35. Tarku Karma, art of spinning by spindle. 36. Taka, art of carpentry. 37. Vistuvidi, art of engineering. 38. Rapyo Ratna Parke, art of testing silver and jewels. 39. Dh2 Vida, art of metallurgy. 40. Ma'ayargajana art of tinning jewels. 41. Karajana art of mineralogy. 42. Vikayurveda yoga art of practicing medicine or medical treatment by herbs. 43. Miyakuku elvako yuda vidi art of knowing the mode of fighting of lambs, cocks and birds. 44. Eucharik praplana, pralpana art of maintaining or knowing conversation between male and female cockatoos. 45. Utsdana art of healing or cleaning a person with perfumes. 46. Kiamriyana kaela art of combing hair. 47. Akaramuik kathana art of talking with letters and fingers. 48. Mlekita kutarka vikalpa art of fabricating barbarous or foreign sophistry. 49. Diabhjana art of knowing provincial dialects. 50. Pupaakaik nirmiti jana art of knowing prediction by heavenly voice or knowing preparation of toy carts by flowers. 51. Yantra mtk art of mechanics. 52. Dhra mtk art of the use of amulets. 53. Saṁhitā art of conversation. 54. Mnazk Vyakri art of composing verse mentally. 55. Kri Vikalpa art of designing a literary work or a medical remedy. 56. Shilataka yoga art of practicing as a builder of shrines called after him. 57. Abhidnako Chindojana art of the use of lexicography and meters. 58. Vastragopana art of concealment of cloths. 59. Daitavi art of knowing specific gambling. 60. Karakar art of playing with dice or magnet. 61. Bilaka Karanaka art of using children's toys. 62. Vainyik Vidi art of enforcing discipline. 63. Vijayik Vidi art of gaining victory. 64. Vaitlik Vidi art of awakening master with music at dawn. All these arts manifesting their own eternal forms are ever visible in the region of Galoka as the ingredients of rasa. And, in the mundane sphere, they have been instantly exhibited in the pastimes of Brahma by the spiritual sit potency, yogam y. So Ararpa says, Sadnantai, Santiti, i.e., Krishna is ever manifest in his beauty with his infinite pastimes in Galoka. Sometimes the variant manifestation of those pastimes becomes visible on the mundane plane. Ardhari, the Supreme Lord, also manifests his pastimes of birth, etc., accompanied by all his paraphernalia. The divine sportive potency fills the hearts of his paraphernalia with appropriate spiritual sentiments in conformity with the will of Krishna. Those pastimes that manifest themselves on the mundane plane are his visible pastimes. All those very pastimes exist in their non-visible form in Galoka beyond the ken of mundane knowledge. In his visible pastimes Krishna sojourns in Gokula, Mathur and Dvirak. Those pastimes that are non-visible in those three places are visible in their spiritual sites of V and Divana. From the conclusions just stated it is clear that there is no distinction between the visible and non-visible pastimes. The Apostle J. Bhagavatam in his commentary on this loka as well as in the gloss of Uvala and Lamai and in Krishna Sandarbha remarks that the visible pastimes of Krishna are the creation of his spiritual potency. Being in conjunction with the reference to mundane function they exhibit certain features which seem to be true by the influence of the limiting potency, my. But these cannot exist in the transcendental reality. The destruction of demons, illicit paramourship, birth, etc., are examples of this peculiarity. The gopas are the extensions of the ecstatic energy of Krishna, and so are exceptionally his own. How can there be illicit connection in their case? The illicit mistressship of the gopas found in his visible pastime is but the mundane reflection of the transcendental reality. The hidden meaning underlying the words of R.J. Bhagavatam, when it is made explicit, will leave no doubt in the minds of the readers. R.J. Bhagavatam is our preacher of transcendental truth. So he is always under the influence of Ararpa and Santana. Moreover, in the pastimes of Krishna R.J. Va is one of the Majaras. So he is conversant with all transcendental realities. There are some who, being unable to understand the drift of his statements, give meanings of their own invention and indulge in useless controversies. Ararpa and Santana say that there is no real and essential distinction between the LLS visible and non-visible. The only distinction lies in this that one is manifest in the mundane sphere whereas the other is not so. In the supermundane manifestation there is absolute purity in the seer and the seen. A particularly fortunate person when he is favored by Krishna can shake off worldly shackles and connections, enter the transcendental region after attaining the realized taste of the varieties of rasa that is available during the period of novitiate. Only such a person can have a view and taste of the perfect and absolutely pure LL of Galoka. Such receptive natures are rarely to be found. He, who exists in the mundane sphere, can also realize the taste of Siddhrasa by the grace of Krishna by being enabled to attain the realized state of service. Such a person can have a view of the pastimes of Goloka manifested in the mundane LL of Gokula. There is certainly a difference between these two classes of eligible seekers of the truth. Until one attains the perfectly transcendental stage, he must be hampered by his lingering limitations in his vision of the pastimes of Goloka. Again, the vision of the transcendental reality varies according to the degree of self-realization. The vision of Goloka must also vary accordingly. It is only those fettered souls who are excessively addicted to worldliness that are devoid of the devotional eye. Of them some are enmeshed by the variegatedness of the deluding energy, while others aspire after self-annihilation under the influence of centrifugal knowledge. Though they might have a view of the mundanely manifested pastimes of the Supreme Lord, they can have only a material conception of those visible pastimes, this conception being devoid of transcendental reality. Hence the realization of Goloka appears in proportion to eligibility due to the degree of one's self-realization. The underlying principle is this, that though Gokula is as holy and free from dross as Goloka, still it is manifested on the mundane plane by the influence of the Sit potency. Yogam Y. In visible and non-visible matters of transcendental regions there is no impurity, contamination and imperfection inherent in the world of limitation. Only there is some difference in the matter of realization in proportion to the self-realization of the seekers after the absolute. Impurity, unwholesomeness, foreign elements, illusion, nescience, unholiness, utter inadequacy, insignificance, grossness, these appertain to the eye, intellect, mind and ego stultified by the material nature of conditioned souls. They have nothing to do with the essential nature of transcendence. The more one is free from these blots, the more is one capable of realizing the unqualified absolute. The truth who has been revealed by the scriptures is free from dross. But the realizations of the seekers of the knowledge of these realities are with or without flaw in accordance with the degree of their individual realization. Those 64 arts that have been enumerated above do in reality exist instinctively only in Goloka. Unwholesomeness, insignificance, grossness are found in those arts in accordance with the degree of self-realization on the part of aspirants after the knowledge of the Absolute. According to RLA Arpa and RLA Santana, all those pastimes that have been visible in Gokula exist in all purity and free from all tinge of limitation in Goloka. So transcendental autocratic paramorship also exists in Goloka in inconceivable purity, judged by the same standard and reasoning. All manifestation by the Sit potency, Yogam Y, are pure. So, as the above paramorship is the creation of Yogam Y, it is necessarily free from all contamination, and appertains to the absolute reality. Let us pause to consider what the absolute reality is in himself. R.R. Pagazvam says, P. Ravakta, S. Radha. In regard to these lakas R.P. J. Vagazvam after mature deliberation has established the transcendental paramorship as Vibrahma Vilsa, something seemingly different from what it appears to be. Such are the pastimes of birth, etc., accomplished by Yogam Y. By the explanation Tathpai, Vravanit and M. Rlaj Vagazvam has expressed his profound implication. Joyous pastimes by the medium of seeming error, Vibrahma Vilsa, as the contrivance of Yogam Y, has also been admitted in the concluding statements of Arpa and Santana. Still, since R.P. J. Vagazvam has established the identity of Goloka with Gokula, it must be admitted that there is transcendental reality underlying all the pastimes of Gokula. A husband is one who binds oneself in wedlock with a girl, while a paramour is one who, in order to win another's wife's love by means of love, crosses the conventions of morality, by the impulse of the sentiment that regards her love as the be-all and end-all of existence. In Goloka there is no such function at all as that of the nuptial relationship. Hence there is no husbandhood characterized by such connection. On the other hand, since the goddess, who are self-supported real entities, are not tied to anybody else in wedlock, they cannot also have the state of concubinage. There can also be no separate entities in the forms of svakya, conjugal, and parakya, adulterous, states. In the visible pastimes on the mundane plane, the function in the form of the nuptial relationship is found to exist. Krishna is beyond the scope of that function. Hence the said function of the circle of all love is contrived by Yogam Y. Krishna tastes the transcendental rasa akin to paramorship by overstepping that function. This pastime of going beyond the pale of the apparent moral function manifested by yogam is, however, also observable only on the mundane plane by the eye that is enwrapped by the mundane covering. But there is really no such levity in the pastimes of Krishna. The rasa of paramourship is certainly the extracted essence of all the rasas. If it be said that it does not exist in Goloka, it would be highly deprecatory to Goloka. It is not the fact that there is no supremely wholesome tasting of rasa in the supremely excellent realm of Goloka. Krishna, the fountainhead of all avat ras, tastes the same in a distinct form in Goloka and in another distinct form in Gokula. Therefore, in spite of the seeming appearance, to the mundane eye, of outstepping the bounds of the legitimate function by the form of paramourship, there must be present the truth of it in some form even in Goloka. Dmr Mopai Ramat, Mani Avarada Saharada, Ramvra Sundar Bryathrataka Pratibimba Vibrahma and other texts of the scriptures go to show that self-delightedness is the essential distinctive quality of Krishna himself. Krishna in his majestic sit realm causes the manifestation of his own sit potency as Lakam and enjoys her as his own wedded consort. As this feeling of wedded consorthood preponderates there, rasa expands in a wholesome form only up to the state of servanthood, Disaya rasa. But in Goloka he divides up his sit potency into thousands of gopas and eternally engages in amorous pastimes with them by forgetting the sentiments of ownership. By the sentiments of ownership there cannot be the extreme inaccessibility of the rasa. So the gopas have naturally, from eternity, the innate sentiment of being others' wedded wives. Krishna too in response to that sentiment, by assuming the reciprocal sentiment of paramourship, performs the arsa and the other amorous pastimes with the aid of the flute, his favorite Charami. Goloka is the transcendental seat of eternally self-realized rasa, beyond limited conception. Hence in Goloka there is realization of the sentimental assumption of the rasa of paramourship. Again such is the nature of the principle of the majesty that in the realm of Vaikuha there is no rasa of parental affection towards the source of all avat ras. But in Goloka, the seat of all super-excellent deliciousness, there is no more than the original sentimental egoistic assumption of the same rasa. There Nanda and Yad are visibly present, but there is no occurrence of birth. For want of the occurrence of birth the assumed egoistic sentiment of parental affection of Nanda and Yad has no foundation in the actual existence of such entities as father and mother, but it is of the nature of sentimental assumption on their parts, cf. Jyati Jana and if so Divik Janma Vida, etc. For the purpose of the realization of the rasa the assumed egoistic sentiment is, however, eternal. In the rasa of amorous love if the corresponding egoistic sentiments of concubinage and paramourship be mere eternal assumptions there is nothing to blame in them and it also does not go against the scriptures. When those transcendental entities of Goloka becomes manifest in Vra then those two egoistic sentiments become somewhat more palpable to the mundane view in the phenomenal world and there comes to be this much difference only. In the rasa of parental affection the sentiments of Nanda and Yad that they are parents becomes manifest in the more tangible form in the pastimes of birth etc. And in the amorous rasa the corresponding sentiments of concubinage in the respective gopas become manifest in the forms of their marriages with Abhimanyu, Govardhana, etc. In reality there is no such separate entity as husbandhood of the gopas either in Goloka or in Gokula. Hence the Stras declare that there is no sexual union of the gopas with their husbands. It is also for the same reason that the authorized teacher of the principle of rasa, R.R. Pa, writes that in the transcendental amorous rasa the hero is of two different types, viz. the wedded husband and the paramour pati kopapati cheti prabdhvi avirudvit. Rjava, in his commentary by his words Pati Puravanit and Vityovra Vanit and acknowledges the eternal paramourship of Krishna in Goloka and Gokula and the husbandhood of Krishna in Vaikuha and Dvirak etc. In the Lord of Goloka and the Lord of Gokula the character of paramourship is found in its complete form. Krishna's deliberate overstepping of his own quality of self-delightedness is caused by the desire of union with another's wedded wife. The state of being another's wedded wife is nothing but the corresponding assumed sentiment on the part of the gopas. In reality they have no husbands with independent and separate existence. Still their very egoistic sentiment makes them have the nature of the wedded wives of others. So all the characteristics, viz. that desire makes the paramour overstep the bounds of duty, etc., are eternally present in the seat of all deliciousness. In Vra that very thing reveals itself, to an extent, in a form more tangible to persons with mundane eyes. So in Goloka there is inconceivable distinction and non-distinction between the rasas analogous to mundane concubineship and wifehood. It may be said with equal truth that there is no distinction in Goloka between the two, as also that there is such distinction. The essence of paramourship is the cessation of ownership, and the abeyance of ownership is the enjoyment of his own sit potency in the shape of abeyance of paramourship or enjoyment without the sanction of wedlock. The conjunction of the two exists there as one rasa accommodating both varieties. In Gokula it is really the same, with the difference that it produces a different impression on observers belonging to the mundane plane. In Govinda, the hero of Goloka, there exist both husbandhood and paramourship above all piety and impiety and free from all grossness. Such is also the case with the hero of Gokula, although there is a distinction in realization caused by Yogam Y. If it be urged that what is manifested by Yogam Y is the highest truth, being the creation of the sit potency, and that therefore, the impression of paramourship is also really true, the reply is that there may exist an impression of analogous sentimental egoism in the tasting of rasa free from any offense, because it is not without a basis in truth. But the unwholesome impression that is produced in the mundane judgment is offensive, and as such cannot exist in the pure sit realm. In fact, R.P.J. Bhagavatam has come to the true conclusion, and at the same time the finding of the opposing party is also inconceivably true. It is the vain empirical wranglings about wedded wifehood and concubinage which is false and full of specious verbosity. He who goes through the commentaries of R.P.J. Bhagavatam and those of the opposing party with an impartial judgment cannot maintain his attitude of protest engendered by any real doubt. What the unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Lord says is all true and is independent of any consideration of unwholesome pros and cons. There is, however, the element of mystery in their verbal controversies. Those whose judgment is made of mundane stuff, being unable to enter into the spirit of the all-loving controversies among pure devotees due to their own want of unalloyed devotion, are apt to impute to the devotees their own defect of partisanship and opposing views. Commenting on the loka of Arsa Pasidai Y, Gopantatpat and Ka, etc., what R.P. Da Santana Gosvam has stated conclusively in his Vyavatua has been accepted with reverence by the true devotee R.P. Da Vivantha Kakravart without any protest. Whenever any dispute arises regarding the pure cognitive pastimes, such as Goloka, etc., we would do well to remember the precious advice from the holy lips of R.M.N. Mahaprabhu and his associates, the Gosvams, viz. That the truth absolute is ever characterized by spiritual variegatedness that transcends the variegatedness of mundane phenomena. But he is never featureless. The divine rasa is lovely with the variegatedness of the fourfold distinction of Vibha and Abha, Estvika and Vyabhikri, and the rasa is ever present in Goloka and Vaikuha. The rasa of Goloka manifests as Vra rasa on the mundane plane for the benefit of the devotees by the power of Yogam Y. Whatever is observable in Gokula rasa should be visible in Goloka rasa in a clearly explicit form. Hence the distinction of paramourship and concubinage, the variegatedness of the respective rasas of all different persons, the soil, water, river, hill, portico, bower, cows, etc. All the features of Gokula exist in Goloka, disposed in an appropriate manner. There is only this peculiarity that the mundane conceptions of human beings possessed of material judgment regarding those transcendental entities do not exist there. The conception of Goloka manifests itself differently in proportion to the degree of realization of the various pastimes of Vra, and it is very difficult to lay down any definite criterion as to which portions are mundane and which are uncontaminated. The more the eye of devotion is tinged with the salve of love, the more will the transcendental concept gradually manifest itself. So there is no need of further hypothetical speculation which does not improve one's spiritual appreciation, as the substantive knowledge of Goloka is an inconceivable entity. To try to pursue the inconceivable by the conceptual process is like pounding the empty husk of grain, which is sure to have a fruitless ending. It is, therefore, one's bounden duty, by refraining from the endeavor to know, to try to gain the experience of the transcendental by the practice of pure devotion. Any course, the adoption of which tends to produce the impression of featurelessness, must be shunned by all means. Unalloyed parakya rasa free from all mundane conception is a most rare attainment. It is this which has been described in the narrative of the pastimes of Gokula. Those devotees, who follow the dictate of their pure spontaneous love, should base their devotional endeavors on that narrative. They will attain to the more wholesome fundamental principle on reaching the stage of realization. The devotional activities characterized by illicit amour, as practiced by worldly-minded conditioned souls, are forbidden mundane impiety. The heart of our apostle R.P. Bhagavatam was very much moved by such practices and induced him to give us his conclusive statements on the subject. It is the duty of a pure Vaishnava to accept the real spirit of his statements. It is a great offense to disrespect the Sriya and to seek to establish a different doctrine in opposition to him. Our Brahma Sahit 5.38 Translation: I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Vaimasundara, Krishna himself with inconceivable innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the sav of love. Purport: the Vaimasundara form of Krishna is his inconceivable simultaneous personal and impersonal self-contradictory form. True devotees see that form in their purified hearts under the influence of devotional trance. The form Vaima is not the blue color visible in the mundane world but is the transcendental variegated color affording eternal bliss and is not visible to the mortal eye. On a consideration of the trance of Vaisadeva as in the Loka, Bhakti Yogina Manasi etc. SB 1.7. 4. It will be clear that the form of our Krishna is the full personality of Godhead and can only be visible in the heart of a true devotee, which is the only true seat in the state of trance under the influence of devotion. When Krishna manifested himself in Vraja, both the devotees and non-devotees saw him with this very eye. But only the devotees cherished him, eternally present in Vraja, as the priceless jewel of their heart. Nowadays also the devotees see him in Vraja in their hearts, saturated with devotion although they do not see him with their eyes. The eye of devotion is nothing but the eye of the pure unalloyed spiritual self of the Jiva. The form of Krishna is visible to that eye in proportion to its purification by the practice of devotion. When the devotion of the neophyte reaches the stage of Bhava Bhakti, the pure eye of that devotee is tinged with the sav of love by the grace of Krishna, which enables him to see Krishna face to face. The phrase in their hearts means Krishna is visible in proportion as their hearts are purified by the practice of devotion. The sum and substance of this loka is that the form of Krishna, who is Vaimasundara, Naavara, best dancer, Muraldhara, holder of the flute, and Tribhaga, triple bending, is not a mental concoction but is transcendental, and is visible with the eye of the soul of the devotee under trance. Our Brahma Sahit 5.39 Translation: I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Arma, and Siha, Vimana, etc., as his subjective portions. Purport: his subjective portions as the avatars, viz., Arma, etc., appear from Vaikuha, and his own form Krishna manifests himself with Vraja in this world, from Goloka. The underlying sense is that Krishna Chaitanya, identical with Krishna himself, also brings about by his appearance the direct manifestation of Godhead himself. Our Brahma Sahit 5.40 Translation: I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose effulgence is the source of the non-differentiated Brahman mentioned in the Upanishads. Being differentiated from the infinity of glories of the mundane universe, appears as the indivisible, infinite, limitless truth. Purport: the mundane universe created by MY is one of the infinite external manifestations accommodating space, time and gross things. The impersonal aspect of Godhead, the non-differentiated Brahman, is far above this principle of mundane creation. But even the non-differentiated Brahman is only the external effulgence emanating from the boundary wall of the transcendental realm of Vaikuha, displaying the triquadrantal glory of Govinda. The non-differentiated Brahman is indivisible, hence is also one without a second, and is the infinite and residual entity. Our Brahma Sahit 5.41 Translation: I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is the absolute substantive principle, being the ultimate entity in the form of the support of all existence, whose external potency embodies the threefold mundane qualities, viz., sattva, rajas, and tamas, and diffuses the Vedic knowledge regarding the mundane world. Purport: the active mundane quality of rajas brings forth or generates all mundane entities. The quality of sattva, mundane manifestive principle, in conjunction with rajas stands for the maintenance of the existence of entities that are so produced, and the quality of tamas represents the principle of destruction. The substantive principle, which is mixed with the threefold mundane qualities, is mundane, while the unmixed substance is transcendental. The quality of eternal existence is the principle of absolute entity. The person whose proper form abides in that essence is alone an alloyed entity, non-mundane, supermundane, and free from all mundane quality. He is cognitive bliss. It is the deluding energy who has elaborated the regulative knowledge, Vedas, bearing on the threefold mundane quality. Our Brahma Sahit 5.42 translation: I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose glory ever triumphantly dominates the mundane world by the activity of his own pastimes, being reflected in the mind of recollecting souls as the transcendental entity of ever blissful cognitive rasa. Purport: those who constantly recollect in accordance with spiritual instructions the name, figure, attributes and pastimes of the form of Krishna appearing in the amorous rasa, whose loveliness vanquishes the god of mundane love, conqueror of all mundane hearts, are alone meditators of Krishna. Krishna, who is full of pastimes, always manifests himself with his realm only in the pure receptive cognition of such persons. The pastimes of that manifested divine realm triumphantly dominates in every way all the majesty and beauty of the mundane world. Our Brahma Sahit 5.43 translation: lowest of all is located Devdhma mundane world. Next above it is Mahiyadhma abode of Mahiya. Above Mahiyadhma is placed Haridhma abode of Hari, and above them all is located Krishna's own realm named Goloka. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who has allotted their respective authorities to the rulers of those graded realms. Purport: the realm of Goloka stands highest above all others. Brahma, looking up to the higher position of Goloka, is speaking of the other realms from the point of view of his own realm. The first in order is this mundane world called Devdhma, consisting of the 14 worlds, viz. Satyaloka, etc. Next above Devdhma is located Evadhma, one portion of which, called Makladhma, is enveloped in darkness. Interpenetrating this portion of Evadhma there shines the Satyaloka, full of great light. Above the same appears Haridhma, or the transcendental Vaikuhaloka. The potency of Devdhma, in the form of the extension of My, and that of Ivaloka, consisting of time, space and matter, are the potency of the separated particles pervaded by the penumbral reflection of the subjective portion of the divinity. But Haridhma is ever resplendent with transcendental majesty, and the great splendor of all sweetness predominates over all other majesties in Goloka. The Supreme Lord Govinda by his own direct and indirect power has constituted those respective potencies of those realms. Our Brahma Sahit 5.44 translation: the external potency My, who is of the nature of the shadow of the Sit potency, is worshipped by all people as Durg, the creating, preserving and destroying agency of this mundane world. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, in accordance with whose will Durg conducts herself. Purport: the aforesaid presiding deity of Devdhma is being described. The world, in which Brahma takes his stand and hymns the Lord of Goloka, is Devdhma, consisting of the 14 worlds, and Durg is its presiding deity. She is 10-armed, representing the tenfold fruitive activities. She rides on the lion, representing her heroic prowess. She tramples down Masura, representing the subduer of vices. She is the mother of 2 sons, Kairatikeya and Gaiya, representing beauty and success. She is placed between Lakam and Sarasvat, representing mundane opulence and mundane knowledge. She is armed with the 20 weapons, representing the various pious activities enjoined by the Vedas for suppression of vices. She holds the snake, representing the beauty of destructive time. Such is Durg, possessing all these manifold forms. Durg is possessed of Durga, which means a prison house. When Javas begotten of the marginal potency, Taasthakti, forget the service of Krishna, they are confined in the mundane prison house, the citadel of Durg. The wheel of karma is the instrument of punishment at this place. The work of purifying these penalized Javas is the duty devolved upon Durg. She is incessantly engaged in discharging the same by the will of Govinda. When, luckily, the forgetfulness of Govinda on the part of imprisoned Javas is remarked by them by coming in contact with self-realized souls, and their natural aptitude for the loving service of Krishna is aroused, Durg herself then becomes the agency of their deliverance by the will of Govinda. So it behooves everybody to obtain the guileless grace of Durg, the mistress of this prison house, by propitiating her with the selfless service of Krishna. The boons received from Durg in the shape of wealth, property, recovery from illness of wife and sons, should be realized as the deluding kindness of Durg. The mundane psychical jubilations of Dhamavidi, the 10 goddesses or forms of Durg, are elaborated for the delusion of the fettered souls of this world. Java is a spiritual atomic part of Krishna. When he forgets his service of Krishna, he is at once deflected by the attracting power of My in this world, who throws him into the whirlpool of mundane fruitive activity, karma, by confining him in a gross body constituted by the 5 material elements, their 5 attributes and 11 senses, resembling the garb of a prisoner. In this whirlpool, Jiva has experience of happiness and miseries, heaven and hell. Besides this, there is a subtle body, consisting of the mind, intelligence and ego, inside the gross body. By means of the subtle body, the Jiva forsakes one gross body and takes recourse to another. The Jiva cannot get rid of the subtle body, full of nescience and evil desires, unless and until he is liberated. On getting rid of the subtle body, he bathes in the Vira and goes up to Hari Dhyama. Such are the duties performed by Durga in accordance with the will of Govinda. In the Bhagavata Loka, Vilayamne, Durga, the relationship between Durga and the conditioned souls has been described. Durga, worshipped by the people of this mundane world, is the Durga described above. But the spiritual Durga, mentioned in the mantra, which is the outer covering of the spiritual realm of the Supreme Lord, is the eternal maidservant of Krishna and is, therefore, the transcendental reality whose shadow, the Durga of this world, functions in this mundane world as her maidservant. By the purport of Loka 3. Our Brahma Sahit 5.45 translation: just as milk is transformed into curd by the action of acids, but yet the effect curd is neither same as nor different from its cause, viz. Milk, so I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whom the state of Ambhu is a transformation for the performance of the work of destruction. Purport: the real nature of Ambhu, the presiding deity of Mahya Dhyama, is described. Ambhu is not a second godhead other than Krishna. Those who entertain such discriminating sentiment commit a great offense against the Supreme Lord. The supremacy of Ambhu is subservient to that of Govinda, hence they are not really different from each other. The non-distinction is established by the fact that just as milk treated with acid turns into curd, so Godhead becomes a subservient when he himself attains a distinct personality by the addition of a particular element of adulteration. This personality has no independent initiative. The said adulterating principle is constituted of a combination of the stupefying quality of the deluding energy, the quality of non-plenitude of the marginal potency, and a slight degree of the ecstatic cognitive principle of the plenary spiritual potency. This specifically adulterated reflection of the principle of the subjective portion of the divinity is Sattva, in the form of the effulgent masculine symbol God Ambhu, from whom Rudradeva is manifested. In the work of mundane creation as the material cause, in the work of preservation by the destruction of sundry asuras, and in the work of destruction to conduct the whole operation, Govinda manifests himself as Gu Avatara in the form of Ambhu, who is the separated portion of Govinda imbued with the principle of his subjective plenary portion. The personality of the destructive principle in the form of time has been identified with that of Ambhu by scriptural evidences that have been adduced in the commentary. The purport of the Bhagavata Lokas, viz. Vyavanyath Ambhu, etc., is that Ambhu, in pursuance of the will of Govinda, works in union with his consort Durgdev by his own time energy. He teaches pious duties, dharma, as stepping stones to the attainment of spiritual service in the various tantrastras, etc., suitable for Jivas in different grades of the conditional existence. In obedience to the will of Govinda, Ambhu maintains and fosters the religion of pure devotion by preaching the cult of illusionism, Myveda, and the speculative Gamastras. The 50 attributes of individual souls are manifest in a far vaster measure in Ambhu, and 5 additional attributes not attainable by Jivas are also partly found in him. So Ambhu cannot be called a Jiva. He is the Lord of Jiva, but yet partakes of the nature of a separated portion of Govinda. Our Brahma Sahit 5.46 translation: the light of one candle being communicated to other candles, although it burns separately in them, is the same in its quality. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who exhibits himself equally in the same mobile manner in his various manifestations. Purport: the presiding deities of Hari Dhyama, viz. Hari, Narya, Vu, etc., the subjective portions of Krishna, are being described. The majestic manifestation of Krishna is Narya, Lord of Vaikuha, whose subjective portion is Krodaka Yvu, the prime cause, whose portion is Garbhodaka Y. Krodaka Y is again the subjective portion of Garbhodaka Yvu. The word Vu indicates all-pervading, omnipresent and omniscient personality. In this loka, the activities of the subjective portions of the divinity are enunciated by the specification of the nature of Krodaka Yvu. The personality of Vivu, the embodied form of the manifestive quality, Sattva Gua, is quite distinct from that of Mbhu, who is adulterated with mundane qualities. Vivu's subjective personality is on a level with that of Govinda. Both consist of the unadulterated substantive principle. Vivu in the form of the manifest causal principle is identical with Govinda as regards quality. The manifestive quality, Sattva Gua, that is found to exist in the triple mundane quality, is an adulterated entity, being alloyed with the qualities of mundane activity and inertia. Brahma is the dislocated portion of the divinity, manifested in the principle of mundane action, endowed with the functional nature of his subjective portion. And Mbhu is the dislocated portion of the divinity manifested in the principle of mundane inertia, possessing similarly the functional nature of his subjective portion. The reason for their being dislocated portions is that the two principles of mundane action and inertia being altogether wanting in the spiritual essence, any entities that are manifested in them are located at a great distance from the divinity himself or his facsimiles. Although the mundane manifestive quality is of the adulterated kind, Vivu, the manifestation of the divinity in the mundane manifestive quality, makes his appearance in the unadulterated manifestive principle, which is a constituent of the mundane manifestive quality. Hence Vivu is the full subjective portion and belongs to the category of the superior Varas. He is the lord of the deluding potency and not alloyed with her. Vivu is the agent of Govinda's unsubjective nature in the form of the prime cause. All the majestic attributes of Govinda, aggregating 60 in number, are fully present in his majestic manifestation, and Arya. Brahma and Eva are entities adulterated with mundane qualities. Though Vivu is also divine appearance in mundane quality, Guavatra, still he is not adulterated. The appearance of an Arya in the form of Mahavivu, the appearance of Mahavivu in the form of Garbhodaka Y, and the appearance of Vivu in the form of Kairodaka Y, are examples of the ubiquitous function of the divinity. Vivu is Godhead himself, and the two other Guavatras and all the other gods are entities possessing authority in subordination to him. From the subjective majestic manifestation of the Supreme Self luminous Govinda emanate Kairodaka Y, Garbhodaka Y, Kairodaka Y, and all other derivative subjective divine descents, avatras, such as Arma, etc. Analogous to communicated light appearing in different candles, shining by the operation of the spiritual potency of Govinda. Our Brahma Sahit 5.47 Translation. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who assuming his own great subjective form, who bears the name of Ea, replete with the all-accommodating potency, and reposing in the causal ocean with the infinity of the world in the pores of his hair, enjoys creative sleep yoga nidra. Purport. The subjective nature of Ananta, who has the form of the couch of Mahavivu, is described. Ananta, the same who is the infinite couch on which Mahavivu reposes, is a distinctive appearance of the divinity bearing the name of Ea, having the subjective nature of the servant of Krishna. Our Brahma Sahit 5.48 Translation. Brahma and other lords of the mundane worlds, appearing from the pores of hair of Mahavivu, remain alive as long as the duration of one exhalation of the latter Mahavivu. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whose subjective personality Mahavivu is the portion of portion. Purport. The supreme majesty of the subjective nature of Vivu is shown here. Our Brahma Sahit 5.49 Translation. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom the separated subjective portion Brahma receives his power for the regulation of the mundane world, just as the sun manifests some portion of his own light in all the effulgent gems that bear the names of Sriyakanta, etc. Purport. Brahma is two types. In certain kalpas, when the potency of the Supreme Lord infuses himself in an eligible Java, the latter acts in the office of Brahma and creates the universe. In those kalpas when no eligible Java is available, after the Brahma of the previous kalpa is liberated, Krishna, by the process of allotment of his own potency, creates the Brahma who has the nature of the Avatra, descent of the divinity in the active mundane principle, Rajogua. By principle, Brahma is superior to ordinary Javas but is not the direct divinity. The divine nature is present in a greater measure in Mbhu than in Brahma. The fundamental significance of the above is that the aggregate of 50 attributes, belonging to the Java, are present in a fuller measure in Brahma, who possesses, in a lesser degree, 5 more attributes which are not found in Javas. But in Mbhu both the 50 attributes of Javas as also the 5 additional attributes found in Brahma are present in even greater measure than in Brahma. Our Brahma Sahit 5.50 Translation I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, whose lotus feet are always held by Gaia upon the pair of two mulai protruding from his elephant head in order to obtain power for his function of destroying all the obstacles on the path of progress of the three worlds. Purport: the power of destroying all obstacles to mundane prosperity has been delegated to Gaia, who is the object of worship to those who are eligible to worship him. He has obtained a rank among the five gods as Brahma, possessing mundane quality. The self-same Gaia is a god in possession of delegated power by infusion of the divine power. All his glory rests entirely on the grace of Govinda. Our Brahma Sahit 5.51 Translation The three worlds are composed of the 9 elements, viz. Fire, earth, ether, water, air, direction, time, soul and mind. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, from whom they originate, in whom they exist and into whom they enter at the time of the universal cataclysm. Purport: there is nothing in the three worlds save the 5 elements, 10 quarters, time, Java soul, and the mental principle allied with the subtle body consisting of mind, intelligence and ego of conditioned souls. The elevationists, karmas, make their offerings and sacrifice in the fire. Conditioned souls know nothing beyond this perceptible world of 9 elements. The Java is the self-same soul whose ecstatic delight the joyless liberationists, JNS, aspire after. Both the principles that are respectively depicted as TM and Prakti by the system of SKI are included in the above. In other words, all the principles that have been enunciated by all the speculative philosophers, Tattva VDS, are included in these 9 elements. Our Govinda is the source of the appearance, continuance and subsidence of all these principles. Our Brahma Sahit 5.52 Translation The sun, who is the king of all the planets, full of infinite effulgence, the image of the good soul, is as the eye of this world. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, in pursuance of whose order the sun performs his journey mounting the wheel of time. Purport: certain professors of the Vedic religion worship the sun as Brahman. The sun is one of the hierarchy of the 5 gods. Some people target in heat the source of this world and therefore designate the sun, the only location of heat, as the root cause of this world. Notwithstanding all that may be said to the contrary, the sun is after all only the presiding deity of a sphere of the sum total of all mundane heat and is hence a god exercising delegated authority. The sun performs his specific function of service certainly by the command of Govinda. Our Brahma Sahit 5.53 Translation I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, by whose conferred power are maintained the manifested potencies that are found to exist, of all virtues, all vices, the Vedas, the penances and all Javas, from Brahma to the meanest insect. Purport: by Dharma is meant the allotted functions of Vara and Rama manifested by the 20 Dharmastras on the authority of the Vedas. Of these 2 divisions, Vara Dharma is that function which is the outcome of the distinctive natures of the 4 Varas, viz. Bharma, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Dra, and Rama Dharma is that function which is appropriate to the respective Ramas or stations of those who belong to the 4 stages, viz. Brahmacharya, Jihasta, Vinaprastha and Sannisa. All customary activities of mankind have been targeted in these twofold divisions. Sins mean nescience, the root of all sins and sinful desire, also the greatest iniquities and sins flowing from them, and the ordinary sins, i.e., all sorts of unprincipled conduct. The category of the Ruddhas means G, Esma, Yajur and Atharva and the Upanishads, which form the crest jewels of the Veda. The Tapas mean all regular practices that are learned with the view of the attainment of the proper function of the self. In many cases, e.g., in the form known as Pakatapas, these practices are of a difficult character. Yoga, with its 8 constituent limbs and devotedness to the knowledge of the undifferentiated Brahman, are included therein. All these are so many distinctive features within the revolving round of the fruitive activities of conditioned souls. The conditioned souls are embarked on a sojourn of successive births from 84 lakhs of varieties of generating organs. They are differentiated into different orders of beings as Devas, Dinavas, Archasas, Navas, and Gas, Kinnaras, and Gandharvas. These Javas, from Brahm down to the small insect, are infinite in type. They make up the aggregate of the conditioned souls from the degree of Brahm to that of the little fly, and are the distinctive features within the revolving wheel of karma. Every one of them is endowed with distinctive powers as individuals and is powerful in a particular sphere. But these powers are by their nature not fully developed in them. The degree of power and nature of property vary according to the measure of manifestation of the possessions of the individual conferred upon him by our Govinda. Our Brahma Sahit 5.54 Translation I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who burns up to their roots all fruitive activities of those who are imbued with devotion and impartially ordains for each the due enjoyment of the fruits of one's activities of all those who walk in the path of work, in accordance with the chain of their previously performed works, no less in the case of the tiny insect that bears the name of Indragopa than in that of Indra, king of the Devas. Purport: God impartially induces the fallen souls to act in the way that is consequent on the deeds of their previous births and to enjoy the fruition of their labors, but, out of his great mercy to his devotees, he purges out, by the fire of ordeal, the root of all karma, viz., nescience and evil desires. Karma, though without beginning, is still perishable. The karma of those who work with the hope of enjoying the fruits of their labors becomes everlasting and endless and is never destroyed. The function of saṁhitā is also a sort of karma befitting in Rama and is not pleasant to Krishna when it aims at liberation, i.e., desire for emancipation. They also receive fruition of their karma and, even if it be disinterested, their karma ends in mamamat, i.e., self-pleasure. But those who are pure devotees always serve Krishna by gratifying his senses, forsaking all attempts of karma and jnana, and being free from all desire save that of serving Krishna. Krishna has fully destroyed the karma, its desires and nescience of those devotees. It is a great wonder that Krishna, being impartial, is fully partial to his devotees. Our Brahma Sahit 5.55 Translation I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, the meditators of whom, by meditating upon him under the sway of wrath, amorous passion, natural friendly love, fear, parental affection, delusion, reverence and willing service, attain to bodily forms befitting the nature of their contemplation. Purport: devotion is of two kinds, viz. 1. Of the nature of deference to regulation and 2. Constituted of natural feeling. Bhakti is roused by following with a tinge of faith in the rule of the sutras and instruction of the preceptors. Such bhakti is of the nature of loyalty to the scriptural regulations. It continues to be operative as long as the corresponding natural feeling is not roused. If a person loves Krishna out of natural tendency, there is the principle of arga, which is no other than a strong desire to serve, which turns into bhava or substantive feeling. When the substantive feeling is aroused, the devotee becomes an object of mercy of Krishna. It takes much time to attain this stage. Devotion which is of the nature of feeling is superior to that connected with scriptural regulation, soon attains to the realized state and is attractive to Krishna. Its various aspects are described in this loka. Bhava, full of reverence to superior. Bhava, full of service for carrying out the commands of the object of worship. Bhava or natural friendly love. Bhava or parental affection and Bhava or amorous love are all included in the category of devotion of the nature of instinctive attachment. But anger, fear and delusion, though they are of the nature of instinctive impulse, are not devotion in the strict sense of the term, because they are not friendly but hostile to the object. Anger is found in asras like Iyapla, fear in Kasa, and delusion in the Paitas of the pantheistic school. They have the feelings of anger, fear and instinctive impulse marked by complete self-forgetful identification with the non-differentiated Brahman. But as there is no friendly feeling towards the object of devotion, there is no bhakti. Again, among the feelings of Nta, Disya, Sakya, Vitsalya and Madhuranta, though indifferent and dormant in Arga, is still reckoned as bhakti on account of its being a little friendly. There is an immense volume of arga in the other four varieties of emotion. By the promise of GT, Yuyatham Prapadyanti Ts Tatava Bhajmayaham Bg. 4.11 I serve one according to his submission, those who allow themselves to be actuated by the sentiments of fear, anger and delusion, attain to Asya Mukti, merging in the Absolute. Thus obtain bodily forms with aptitude for addiction to Brahman and Paramtiyam. The Disya and Sakya classes of worshippers attain bodily forms characterized by masculine or feminine disposition according to their respective grades of eligibility. The Vitsalya class of worshippers get bodily forms befitting fatherly and motherly sentiments. The amorous lovers of Krishna attain the pure forms of gopas, spiritual milkmaids of Vraja. Our Brahma Sahit 5.56 Translation I worship that transcendental seat known as Vatadvpa, whereas loving consorts the Lakamas in their unalloyed spiritual essence practice the amorous service of the Supreme Lord Krishna as their only lover. Wherever a tree is a transcendental purpose tree. Where the soil is the purpose gem, all water is nectar, every word is a song, every gate is a dance, the flute is the favorite attendant, effulgence is full of transcendental bliss and the supreme spiritual entities are all enjoyable and tasty. Where numberless milk cows always emit transcendental oceans of milk. Where there is eternal existence of transcendental time, who is ever present and without past or future and hence is not subject to the quality of passing away even for the space of half a moment. That realm is known as Galoka only to a very few self-realized souls in this world. Purport: that region which Jivas attain by the best performance of their rasa bhajana, though purely transcendental, is by no means devoid of brigadedness. The non-differentiated region is attained by indulging in anger, fear and delusion. The devotees attain Galoka, the transcendental region above Vaikuha, according to the quality of rasa of the respective services. In reality that region is no other than Vatadvpa or the White Island being exceedingly pure. Those who attain the highest rasa in the shape of the realization of pure devotion in this world, viewing the reality of Vatadvpa in Gokula, Vana and Navadvpa within this mundane world, designate the same as Galoka. In that transcendental region of Galoka there are always visible, in their supreme beauty, all the distinctive entities that are incorporated in the pure cognitive principle, viz. The lover and his beloved ones, trees and creepers, mountains, rivers and forests, water, speech, movement, music of the flute, the sun and the moon, tasted and taste, i.e., the unthinkable wonders of the 64 aesthetic arts, milk cows yielding nectar and flow of milk and transcendental ever-existing time. Descriptions that supply the clue to Galoka are found in various places in the Vedas and the other stras such as the Puras, Tantras etc. The Chandogya says, the sum and substance of it is that all the variegatedness of this mundane world and much more variety over and above the mundane are to be found in Galoka. The variety in the transcendental world is fully centralized whereas in the mundane world it is not so and hence productive of well and woe. The centralized variety of Galoka is unalloyed and full of transcendental cognitive joy. The Vedas and Estas practicing devotion revealed by the Vedas, by availing the support of their individual cognitional aptitude actuated by devotion, may have a sight of divine realm and by the power of the grace of Krishna their tiny cognitive faculty attaining the quality of infinitude they are enabled to be on the level of the plane of enjoyments of Krishna. There is a hidden meaning of the proposition even the supreme that is also nevertheless the object of enjoyment. Param api tad svidayam api ka. The word Param api indicates that our Krishna is the only truth absolute in all the transcendental blissful principles and tad svidayam api means his object of enjoyment. The glory of RDH's love for Krishna, taste equality, rasa, of Krishna that is realized by RDH and the bliss of which RDH is conscious in the process of such realization, all these threefold bhvas, emotional entities, becoming available for enjoyment by Krishna he attains his personality of Argora Sundara. It is also this that constitutes the transcendental bliss of the delicious loving, rasa, service manifested by Argora Sundara. This also eternally exists only in the self-same Vatadvpa. Our Brahma Sahit 5.57 translation. On hearing these hymns containing the essence of the truth, the Supreme Lord Krishna said to Brahma, if you experience the inclination to create offspring by being endowed with the real knowledge of the glory of Godhead, listen, my beloved, from me to this science set forth in the following 5 lokas. Purport: the Supreme Lord became propitious when Brahma with great eagerness chanted the names, Krishna and Govinda expressive of the form, attribute and pastimes. Brahma was actuated by the desire for mundane creation. Krishna then said to Brahma how pure unalloyed devotion can be practiced by souls engaged in worldly occupations by combining the same with the desire for carrying out the behest of the Supreme Lord. The knowledge absolute is knowledge of the glory of Godhead. If you want to procreate offspring being endowed with such knowledge, listen attentively to the science of devotion that is contained in the following 5 lokas. How bhakti is practiced by performing worldly duties in the form of carrying out the commands of the Supreme Lord is being described. Our Brahma Sahit 5.58 translation. When the pure spiritual experience is excited by means of cognition and service, bhakti, super excellent unalloyed devotion characterized by love for Godhead, is awakened towards Krishna, the beloved of all souls. Purport: real knowledge is nothing but knowledge of one's relationship to the Absolute. Real knowledge is identical with the knowledge of subjective natures of Sit, animate, Asit, inanimate, and Krishna and of their mutual relationship. Here mental speculation is not alluded to, since that is antagonistic to service, bhakti. The knowledge that embraces only the first 7 of the 10 basic principles, MLA, is the knowledge of relationship. The substantive nature of the spiritual function, abhidha, inculcated by the science of devotion, hearing, chanting, meditation, tending his holy feet, worshipping by rituals, making prostrations, doing menial service, practicing friendship and surrendering oneself are identical with practicing the search for Krishna. It is specifically described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Devotion, bhakti, characterized by love for Godhead, makes her appearance by being awakened by such knowledge and practice. Such devotion is super excellent bhakti and is no other than the final object of attainment of all spiritual endeavor of the individual soul. Java. Our Brahma Sahit 5.59 Translation. The highest devotion is attained by slow degrees by the method of constant endeavor for self-realization with the help of scriptural evidence, theistic conduct and perseverance in practice. Purport evidence. The devotional scriptures, e.g., our Madhbhagavatam, the Vedas, the Puras, the GT, etc. Theistic conduct. The conduct of pious persons, estis, who are pure devotees, and the conduct of those pious persons who practice devotion to Godhead actuated by spontaneous love. Practice to learn about the 10 basic principles, MLA, from the sutras and on receiving the name of Hari as laid down in the same, embodying the name, form, quality and activity of the divinity. To practice the chanting of the name by serving him night and day. By this are meant study of the sutras and association with the estis. The tenfold offense to holy name ceases by serving the name of Hari and simultaneously practicing pious conduct. Practice is no other than following the mode of service of the name practiced by the estis without offense. By perseverance in such practice and devotion characterized by love, which is the fruit of spiritual endeavor, makes her appearance in the pure essence of the soul. Our Brahma Sahit 5.60 Translation. These preliminary practices of devotion Dana Bhakti are conducive to the realization of loving devotion. Loving devotion than whom there is no superior well-being, who goes hand in hand with the attainment of the exclusive state of supreme bliss and who can lead to myself. Purport. The Jiva soul has no better well-being than loving devotion. In this is realized the final beatitude of Jivas. The lotus feet of Krishna are attainable only by loving devotion. He who cultivates the preliminary devotional activities anxiously keeping in view that realized state of devotion can alone attain to that object of all endeavor. None else can have the same. Our Brahma Sahit 5.61 Translation. Abandoning all meritorious performances, serve me with faith. The realization will correspond to the nature of one's faith. The people of the world act ceaselessly in pursuance of some ideal. By meditating on me by means of those deeds, one will obtain devotion characterized by love in the shape of the supreme service. Purport. The function characterized by unalloyed devotion is the real function of all individual souls, Jivas. All other varieties of function are activities of the external cases. These exoteric and esoteric dharmas, functions, are manifold, e.g., non-differential knowledge of the Brahman aiming at extinction of individuality, the Aga-yoga Dharma having as its goal attainment of the state of exclusive existence, Kaivalya, atheistical fruitive ritualism aiming at material enjoyment, Jnana-yoga Dharma seeking to combine knowledge with fruitive activity and the practice of the function of barren asceticism. Getting rid of all these, serve me by pure devotion rooted in faith. Exclusive faith in me is trust. Faith in the form of trust by the process of gradual purification tends to become a constant engagement, an object of liking, ruchi, of attachment, sakti, and a real sentiment, bhva. The more transparent the faith, the greater the degree of realization. If you ask how will the preservation and conduct of worldly affairs be feasible if one is continuously engaged in the endeavor for the realization of bhakti? What also will be the nature of the endeavor for the realization of bhakti when the body will perish consequent on the cessation of the function of the body and of society? In order to strike at the root of this misgiving, the Supreme Lord says, this world subsists by the constant performance of certain activities. Fill all these activities with meditation of me. This will destroy the quality that makes those activities appear as acts done by you. They will then be of the nature of my service, bhakti. Mankind live by the threefold activities of body, mind and society. Eating, seating, walking, resting, sleeping, cleansing the body, covering the body, etc. are the various bodily activities. Thinking, recollecting, retaining an impression, becoming aware of an entity, feeling pleasure and pain, etc. are the mental feats. marrying, practicing reciprocal relationship between the king and subject, practicing brotherhood, attending at sacrificial meetings, offering oblations, digging wells, tanks, etc. for the benefit of the people, maintaining one's relations, practicing hospitality, observing proper civic conduct, showing due respect to others are the various social activities. When these acts are performed for one's selfish enjoyment, they are called karma ka. When the desire for attainment of freedom from activity by knowledge underlies these actions, they are termed jnana yoga or karma yoga. And when these activities are managed to be performed in this way that is conducive to our endeavor for attainment of bhakti, they are called jnana bhakti yoga, i.e., the subsidiary devotional practices. But only those activities that are characterized by the principle of pure worship are called bhakti proper. My meditation is practiced in every act when bhakti proper is practiced in due time while performing the subsidiary devotional activities in one's intercourse with the ungodly people of this world. In such position, a jiva does not become apathetic to Godhead even by performing those worldly activities. This constitutes the practice of looking inwards, i.e., turning towards one's real self. Vidapaniyad, O Mantra 1. The commentator says in regards to this, tena tyaktina visena. The real significance being that if whatever is accepted be received as favor vouchsafed by the Supreme Lord, the worldly activity will cease to be such and will turn into service of Godhead, bhakti. So Visya says Kurvan evaha karmai, karma lipyatner. If the worldly acts are performed in the above manner, one does not get entangled in karma even in hundreds of years of worldly life. The meaning of these two mantras from the Jaina point of view is renouncement of the fruits of one's worldly actions. But from the bhakti point of view they mean the attainment of Krishna's favor, prastam, by their transfer to his account. In this method, which is the path of Arcana, you should do your duties of the world by the meditation of worshiping Godhead thereby. Brahma cherishes the desire for creation in his heart. If that creative desire is practiced by conjoining the same with the meditation of obeying therein the command of the Supreme Lord, then it will be a subsidiary spiritual function, Goadharma, being helpful for the growth of the disposition for the service of the divinity by reason of its characteristic of seeking the protection of Godhead. It was certainly proper to instruct Brahma in this manner. There is no occasion for such instruction in the case of a jiva in whom the spontaneous aversion for entities other than Krishna manifests itself on his attainment of the substantive entity of spiritual devotion, bhva. Our Brahma Sahit 5.62 translation. Listen, O Vidhi, I am the seed, i.e., the fundamental principle of this world of animate and inanimate objects. I am pradna, the substance of matter. I am prakti, material cause, and I am paru, efficient cause. This fiery energy that belongs specially to the Brahman, that inheres in you, has also been conferred by me. It is by bearing this fiery energy that you regulate this phenomenal world of animate and inanimate objects. Purport. Certain thinkers conclude that the non-differentiated Brahman is the ultimate entity and by undergoing self-delusion, vivarta, exhibits the consciousness of differentiation. Or, the limiting principle itself, when it is limited, is the phenomenal world and is itself the Brahman, in its unlimited position. Or, the Brahman is the substance and this phenomenal world is the reflection. Or, everything is an illusion of the jiva. Some think that Godhead is evidently a separate entity. Jiva is another different entity, and the phenomenal world, although it is a singular principle, exists separately as an eternally independent entity. Or, Godhead, is the substantive entity and all other entities, as sit and asit attributes, are one in principle. Some suppose that by the force of inconceivable potency sometimes the monistic and sometimes the dualistic principle is realized as the truth. Some again arrive at the conclusion that the theory of the non-dual minus all potency is meaningless, whence the Brahman is the one eternally unalloyed entity vested with the pure potency. These speculations have originated from Veda relying on the support of the Vedanta Sutra. In these speculations, although there is no truth that holds good in all positions, there is yet a certain measure of truth. Not to speak of the anti-Vedic speculations Eskaya, Patajala, Nyaya and Vyika, nor even of Pirava MMS, which is fond of exclusive fruitive activity in conformity with the teaching of one portion of the Veda. The bodies of opinions detailed above have also come into existence by relying outwardly on the Vedanta itself. By discarding all these speculations, you and your bona fide community should adopt the ultimate principle identical with the doctrine of asintyodbheda, inconceivable simultaneous distinction and non-difference. This will make you eligible for being a true devotee. The basic principle is that this animate world is made up of jivas and the inanimate world is constituted of matter. Of these all the jivas have been manifested by my supreme potency, and this phenomenal world has been manifested by my secondary potency. I am the cause of all causes. In other words, I regulate all of them by the power of my will, although I am not a different entity from the marginal and material and asset potencies. By the transformation of those distinct potencies, pradna, substantive material principle, prakti, material cause, and purua, efficient cause, have been produced. Hence, although as regards the subjective nature of all potency I am pradna, prakti and purua, yet as the possessor of power I am eternally distinct from all those potencies. This simultaneous distinction and non-difference has also sprung from my inconceivable power. So let the attainment of love for Krishna by the practice of pure devotion through the knowledge of their mutual true relationship that subsists between the jiva, the matter, and Krishna based on the principle of inconceivable simultaneous distinction and non-difference, be my instruction for being handed down in the order of spiritual preceptional succession in your community. Our Brahma Sampradaya.